Chapter 2148, Working at the Yao Family House. 1. Do you think he'll let her talk nonsense? By the time she said it, it was too late for us to stop her, so we offended her. Dongfang Yu said helplessly. He did not expect the girl to have such a personality. She did not give them any face and directly kicked them out. This was a novel experience for them. Hearing his big brother's depressed tone, Dongfang Lin still laughed without giving him any face. In fact, he laughed quite happily. This way, the atmosphere between the two brothers became even more harmonious. After that, the two of them chatted for a long time before Dongfang Lin reluctantly let his big brother rest. Alone in his room, Dongfang Yu subconsciously touched the scar on his face. It was only then that he remembered that the scar that had accompanied him for many years had been repaired by him on his way to find Dongfang Lin. He had wanted to keep the scar as a memento, but he was afraid that Lin would be heartbroken if he saw it, so he decided to meet Lin in his best condition. The facts proved that he had made the right decision. Then, he thought of Leng Ruoxue. That girl really gave him a headache. Moreover, he could also see that the girl was quite opinionated and had a very stubborn character. Most importantly, the girl did not give in an inch and did not give them face. This made him, who was once an all-powerful expert, very helpless. However, from this point, it also proved that the girl was not a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. At that moment, Leng Ruoxue, Bing Yao, and Qin Yang appeared in his mind. He knew each of their strengths. After comparing them, he realized that Leng Ruoxue, who he had only met once, had the upper hand in his heart. This fact made him feel very incredulous. How did this happen? He had only met that girl once, and that girl had chased them out. According to common sense, shouldn't he be very angry and have a very bad impression of that girl? However, after thinking for a long time, he suddenly realized that he didn't seem to be too angry. His impression of that girl seemed to have improved. Dongfang Yu broke out in a cold sweat when he thought of this. Damn it! Could it be that he had a tendency to be abused? No. He would never admit that he liked to be abused, but he could not deny that he had a good impression of Leng Ruoxue. As expected of Master Ye's disciple. Dongfang Yu couldn't help but sigh. However, he still couldn't figure out why he had such a good impression of Leng Ruoxue. This didn't make sense. Forget it. Since he couldn't understand it, had better not think about it. Dongfang Yu decided to chase Leng Ruoxue out of his mind for the time being. Otherwise, he would not be able to rest. For 3 consecutive days, Dongfang Yu locked himself in his room. In order to let his big brother rest well, Dongfang Lin did not disturb him. However, Leng Ruoxue's great achievements were already laid out in front of him. After reading through Leng Ruoxue's information, Dongfang Lin couldn't help but smile. He didn't expect this little girl to be so shocking. In less than 100 years, she had advanced to the divine sovereign realm. What kind of monstrous talent was this? Moreover, she seemed to be involved in some of the more secretive things that happened in the divine realm. Of course, those things were not out in the open, so not many people knew about it. However, these things could not be hidden from him. Although he had led his subordinates in seclusion for many years, he had secretly established his own forces in the divine world. At least, his information network was not inferior to the God Lord's estate. It was just that he had not shown it to the public. However, if he were to combine all his forces in the dark, it would definitely be a powerful force that would shock people. And Leng Ruoxue's experiences had also made him more interested in that little girl. Thinking of this, Dongfang Lin immediately went to find Dongfang Yu. When he saw Dongfang Yu, he spoke his thoughts directly. Brother, I've decided to go and meet Leng Ruoxue. Dongfang Lin said with a smile. Why should I? That girl won't give you a good face. The moment he heard Leng Ruoxue's name, Dongfang Yu reflexively resisted. That might not be the case. If I, as Sir Ye's subordinate, were to visit her, could she possibly chase me out? Dongfang Lin said with a smirk. It's hard to say. She's really capable of doing such a thing. Dongfang Yu said through gritted teeth. He was the best example. Then I'll try too. Dongfang Lin said stubbornly. All right. Go and try. Don't cry when you come back with blood. Dongfang Yu said angrily, his face a little dark. Brother. I'm not a child anymore, why would I cry? Dongfang Lin said with a faint smile. When he saw his big brother's depressed and conflicted expression, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. It's good that you don't cry. If you want to go, go. It's good to see her, you'll know how evil she is. Dongfang Yu said fiercely. Yes, yes. I have to see her now. I've decided to leave tomorrow. Dongfang Lin's smile grew wider. The next morning, Dongfang Lin really set off with only 2 subordinates. However, the 2 subordinates kept on mumbling along the way. In the end, Dongfang Lin couldn't take it anymore and roared, and the 2 of them shut their mouths in grievance. After more than a month, the 3 of them arrived at the land of demons. Looking at the land of demons that was completely different from what he remembered, Dongfang Lin couldn't help but exclaim in admiration in his heart. That Leng Ruoxue was really extraordinary. She really didn't know why the people around Big Brother didn't like her. Yes. Quite a number of people around Big Brother were disgusted with Leng Ruoxue. It couldn't be said that he was repulsed. It should be said that they felt too good about themselves, to the point that they didn't even look up to that little girl Leng Ruoxue. Hence, in a short few days, after their publicity, Leng Ruoxue's name had spread throughout his underground base. Of course, it definitely wasn't a good reputation. Otherwise, his 2 subordinates wouldn't have advised him not to meet Leng Ruoxue along the way. However, he had to meet Leng Ruoxue. At the same time, he was wondering if they would still treat Leng Ruoxue the same way if they knew what she had done. Leng Ruoxue was not an easy person to get along with. Based on her methods, she had really given Sir Yu too much face by letting those people leave safely. This was the conclusion he came to after learning about Leng Ruoxue's past in the divinity. His information network in the god world was very tight. Therefore, most things could not be hidden from him. However, he could not guarantee that the information he had on Leng Ruoxue was complete. After all, Leng Ruoxue had many helpers by her side, and those people were not easy to deal with. However, the information he had obtained was enough for him to view Leng Ruoxue in a new light. However, he hadn't even told his big brother about the information he had. Hee. This could also be considered as his selfishness. Because he also looked down on some people around his big brother, he also wanted to make them suffer a little. Otherwise, those people would always have their eyes on top of their heads. Chapter 2149, Working at the Yao family house, 2, there were also some people around him. It was time to give him a beating. Thinking up to this point, Dongfang Lin shot a glance at his 2 subordinates and warned, when you see Leng Ruoxue and the people around her, do you know what you should and shouldn't say? If you make that little girl unhappy, I can't protect you. We won't say anything, my lord. The 2 subordinates looked at each other and quickly said. Dongfang Lin nodded his head lightly when he heard their words because he could tell that the 2 of them were still a little unwilling. However, it didn't matter. Once they caused trouble and learned their lesson, they would remember it. Let's go to the Yao clan to broaden our horizons. Dongfang Lin pointed at the Yao family building not far away and said. Then, he walked toward the Yao family building. His 2 subordinates immediately followed. Because it was early in the morning, there were not many customers in the Yao family building. Thus, Dongfang Lin and his 2 subordinates were invited in without even going through the queue. After they entered, a waiter immediately led them to their seats in the hall. Then, he took out a list of prices and handed it to Dongfang Lin. When Dongfang Lin saw this, he gasped. Oh my god! Could this place be a black shop? Even the cheapest dish cost 100 top-grade crystals. It's a top-grade crystal. It was not low-grade, middle-grade, or high-grade, but supreme-grade. He couldn't understand. Since when did top-grade crystals become so common in the divine realm? The price here was so expensive, and yet it was so popular. It really didn't make sense. However, he immediately thought of the auction that had been set up here. The time of the auction was uncertain, and the items auctioned were indeed enough to make people go crazy. There were some things that even he was envious of, but the auction was not held every day. If he made some aristocratic families stay here for a long time just because there were some good things in the auction, it would really be too much of a waste of money. All right. He was just too rich. At least, if it was him, he would definitely not do such a thing. After thinking for a long time, Dongfang Lin's greatest feeling was that he regretted coming in. Sob. He had a family to support. There were too many people, so he was poor. He really couldn't afford to spend here. Even though he had heard that the Yao family's food was very expensive, he had never dreamed that the food here would be so ridiculously expensive. When he saw the price, his heart ached so much that it bled. However, since he had entered, wouldn't it be a little embarrassing if he left without eating anything? After all, he was once a famous person in the divine realm. Although there might not be many people who knew about him now, he could not even get over such an embarrassing matter. Forget it. Since he was here. Then don't come for nothing. In the end, Dongfang Lin made up his mind and ordered the cheapest dish, hot and sour shredded potatoes. Speaking of which, he had lived in the immortal realm for so long, and he really didn't know what a potato was. It didn't seem to be something from the immortal realm. However, when he was done ordering, he caught a glimpse of the waiter's disbelieving gaze, which made him want to find a hole in the ground to hide in. It looked like he was still embarrassed. Woo-woo. That. I just want to make it up to you first. If it's delicious, then we can order something else. Dongfang Lin laughed awkwardly and explained. However, he regretted it immediately after explaining. Wasn't he trying to hide something? What's the point of explaining? However, the waiter was more cultured and said, I should. Then, he retreated. After the waiter left, Dongfang Lin couldn't help but wipe away the cold sweat on his forehead. Woo! He didn't want to come here anymore. He did not expect that after not moving around in the divine realm for so many years, he would lose so much face the moment he came out. How could he endure this? Unfortunately, his two subordinates did not understand what their master meant and did not see the price on the price list. When they saw that Dongfang Lin had only ordered one dish, the two of them could not help but ask in a low voice, My lord, is one dish enough? Fortunately, the two of them spoke in a low voice. Otherwise, Dongfang Lin would be even more depressed. However, Dongfang Lin was equally unhappy when he heard their words. We are gods. Eating is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to gain some experience. Dongfang Lin said calmly. However, he was definitely not calm in his heart. You're right, master. When the two subordinates heard Dongfang Lin's words, they quickly flattered him. At this moment, the hot and sour shredded potatoes that Dongfang Lin had ordered were also served. Along with the dishes, there was also a bowl of rice. Please enjoy your meal. The waiter said respectfully and then left. After the waiter left, Dongfang Lin and his two subordinates stared at the plate of potato strips in a daze. Dongfang Lin was thinking that the dish was quite beautiful. The light yellow fine silk coupled with the red shredded chili made it look very pleasing to the eye. It was no wonder that their dishes could be sold at sky-high prices. This was even the cheapest dish. Then, he picked up a piece with his chopsticks and tasted it. He was shocked by what he saw. Oh my God! How could this dish be so delicious? That should be potato strips. The spiciness had a hint of sourness, and it was crunchy. He couldn't put down his chopsticks after eating a mouthful. His appetite was simply great. With this thought in mind, the speed at which he took the food naturally became faster and faster. His two subordinates saw their master eating so happily and couldn't help but swallow their saliva. However, they didn't dare to snatch food from the tiger's mouth of their master, because looking at the way their master protected his food, they might die. Poor Dongfang Lin. Even though he had never been a fan of food, he had eaten many exotic delicacies. But now, he had been captured by a plate of ordinary hot and sour shredded potatoes. Moreover, after finishing one plate, he still wasn't satisfied, so he ordered a few more plates and let his subordinates try them. As a result, the three of them began to gobble down the food. "My lord, this dish is really too delicious." A subordinate's mouth was full of food, but he didn't forget to praise her. However, Dongfang Lin didn't have the time to pay attention to him at the moment. He was only focused on eating. 10 more. Another subordinate shouted. Gradually, the number of customers in the restaurant also increased. When those customers saw the way they ate, they glanced at the stacks of plates on their table that were half the height of a person. Everyone secretly despised them. They were really country bumpkins who had not seen the world. Who would eat so crazily? How much money was that? Yes. They were mainly worried about the money. If it were him, they would definitely not be willing to be so extravagant. With feelings of envy, jealousy, and hatred, everyone took their seats. However, they kept peeking at Dongfang Lin and the others with envious eyes from time to time. Dongfang Lin and the others, who were eating happily, were completely unaware of it. However, when it was time to pay, Dongfang Lin and the other two were dumbfounded. "How much did you say?" Dongfang Lin gulped and blinked as he asked. Was he hearing things? She must be hearing things. How could it be more than 20,000? Chapter 2150, Working at the Yao Family House, 3, a total of 20,100 top-grade crystals. The waiter said without changing his expression. 20,000? We didn't eat much. Why is it so expensive? Dongfang Lin's two subordinates could not help but ask. A plate of hot and sour shredded potatoes costs 100 top-grade crystals, and you've eaten 201 plates. Count how much it costs. The waiter said indifferently, but in his heart, he couldn't help but think, these three people can't be thinking of eating the overlord's meal, right? Hee hee. It would be great if that was the case. Recently, no one had dared to cause trouble in the Yao family building. They were so bored that their hair was about to grow. Then, he glanced at Dongfang Lin and the other two and thought, I wonder if these three can take a beating. There were quite a few of them, and they all wanted to practice. That many? Dongfang Lin was completely dumbfounded after hearing what the waiter had to say. He looked at the plates on the table and was at a loss for words. The evidence was irrefutable, and he couldn't refute it even if he wanted to. However, it was fortunate that he didn't know what the waiter was thinking. Otherwise, he might have vomited blood. But now, it was enough to make him depressed, because he didn't seem to have any money. However, he might get beaten up if he said this. He could already see some people rubbing their fists and getting ready for action. I can't help it, you guys eat too much. The waiter shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly. The three of them had eaten more than 200 plates. He had not expected this. In just a short while, they had used up all the potatoes in the shop. During this period, they had to go up the mountain a few times to get more before they had enough. Ah! Can I meet the owner of this shop? Dongfang Lin whispered after some thought. I'm sorry, my master is not seeing guests. The waiter refused without even thinking. But I really have something to see her for. It's very important. Dongfang Lin emphasized. Who knew that after the waiter heard his words, his originally calm face revealed a trace of ridicule. Then, he heard the waiter reply, Your Excellency, not to mention that my master won't see you, even if he does, you'll have to pay for the meal first. Don't worry, I won't go back on my word on the meal. Dongfang Lin's face burned when he heard this. Damn it, even though he wanted to get close to Lin Ruoxue and fight for a free meal, this waiter was so direct and had said it without giving him any face. He was really ashamed. Woo, when had he ever done such an embarrassing thing? Dongfang Lin wanted to cry but had no tears. Then, he gave his subordinates a look, hoping that they would take over the matter. However, when his two subordinates heard the price, they were dumbfounded. They did not know how to react when they saw Dongfang Lin's look. In the end, the furious Dongfang Lin had no choice but to kick his subordinate under the table. He then gritted his teeth. "You too, pay for the meal." Damn it! Did he have to make it so clear? When the two subordinates heard this, their faces instantly turned pale. They didn't bring that much money. The waiter was already impatient when he saw them pushing each other around. Then, he heard the two subordinates tell Dongfang Lin that he didn't have that much money on him. The waiter was annoyed at once. "You guys dared to eat so much without money?" The waiter roared angrily. In an instant, the eyes of all the guests in the hall were drawn over. When Dongfang Lin saw this, his entire face flushed red, and he wanted to find a hole to hide in. "Don't worry, we won't renege on our debt." Dongfang Lin's face was red, and his voice was as soft as a mosquito. "In that case, quickly pay for the meal," the waiter urged. Do you only accept top-grade crystals? Do you accept anything else?" Dongfang Lin asked tentatively. Top-grade crystals were not cabbages, and they couldn't possibly carry so many on them. Besides, he didn't have the habit of carrying money. After all, he would bring one or two subordinates with him wherever he went. However, it was impossible for his subordinates to carry so many top-grade crystals with them. "Yes, but we don't accept trash. We don't want it if it's not in our eyes." The waiter thought for a moment and said. Dongfang Lin was instantly relieved when he heard this. Although he didn't have any top-grade crystals on him, he believed that he still had some good things with him. At least, it should be enough to pay for the meal. "Don't worry, you'll definitely be satisfied with what I have." Dongfang Lin let out a long sigh of relief. "Since that's the case, let's go upstairs and set the price." After the waiter finished speaking, he directly led Dongfang Lin and the other two to a private room upstairs. In the private room, Chengwu had been paying attention to the situation downstairs. When he saw the waiter bringing 3 people up, he did not show any surprise on his face. Instead, he looked as if it was a matter of course. Because whenever there was an emergency, the waiters would bring them to him and let him handle it. Chengwu looked at Dongfang Lin, who was blushing, and smiled. "Please take a seat, the 3 of you." "Thank you." Dongfang Lin expressed his thanks and sat down. "Why aren't you guys sitting?" Glancing at the 2 people who were still standing, Chengwu casually asked. "Well, just stand." The 2 of them quickly said. They had always felt that they had made a big mistake and ate too much, so they didn't dare to sit down. Besides, their lord was still here. If his lord didn't say anything, they wouldn't dare to sit. Chengwu did not force them when he saw their reaction. Then, he turned to look at Dongfang Lin and said, "Sir, do you not have enough money?" "Yes. We left home in a hurry, so we didn't bring too much money with us. I hope you can forgive us." Dongfang Lin's face was filled with embarrassment. In fact, he didn't expect the food here to be so expensive, and they had eaten so much, so it was a tragedy. "It's okay. Everyone has times when they can't make ends meet. However, you still have to pay." Chengwu laughed. "Of course. So, I want to use something to pay off the debt." Dongfang Lin said gloomily. "Sure, but well decide the price." Chengwu reminded. "What you say? Isn't it at the market price?" Hearing this, Dongfang Lin asked in surprise. Although he had lived for a long time, he had very little experience in haggling. Therefore, for a moment, he had become a lost little lamb. Chengwu's words had also made him feel a little uncomfortable. To put it bluntly, he was not used to it. "How is that possible?" Chengwu's smile was very friendly. However, his words made Dongfang Lin feel that he was definitely a vampire. However, he had too little experience in this area. Hence, he was no match for the wily and cunning Chengwu. After a few rounds, Dongfang Lin was defeated. The items that he had taken out, including the best fire ginseng that was close to 1,000 years old, had all been belittled by Cheng Wu. In addition, while he was trying to attack him, Cheng Wu had also taken out the same items in his hands to compare with those he had. After comparing them, Dongfang Lin and the other two were all silent. Because they really had nothing to say. This was too much of a bully. Everything in the other party's hands was priceless and couldn't be bought even with money. What's the point of competing? For a moment, Dongfang Lin really wanted to kill him and take his treasure. However, he was only thinking about it casually. He was clear that this Yao clan building belonged to Leng Ruoxue. If he really touched her people, that girl would definitely kill him without a second word. After a series of blows, Dongfang Lin had no choice but to agree to the price that Cheng Wu had set for his items. However, after calculating everything, he found out that all of his items had only been discounted to 15,000 top-grade crystals. He was still short of 5,000. What should he do? Dongfang Lin looked at his two dumbfounded subordinates and was even more at a loss. Wu. He looked pitifully at Cheng Wu without saying a word. In the end, Cheng Wu could no longer bear his resentful gaze and suggested, "Why don't you three stay here and work?" Work? Dongfang Lin's eyes widened in disbelief. Yup. I provide food and accommodation, 2 days off a month, and the pay is 5 top-grade crystal stones a month. If the business is good, there will be a bonus and pills. Cheng Wu said with a smile. He had already seen that the person in front of him had extraordinary strength, so he really didn't mind having such an expert in the store. 5 pieces of high-grade crystal stones a month. They owed the other party 5,000 top-grade crystal stones. With this conversion, how long would the three of them have to work here? Dongfang Lin wasn't the only one who was trying to settle the score. His two subordinates were doing the same thing. However, in the end, the three of them burst into tears because they realized that they couldn't count. It seemed like they would have to work here for a long time. As for how long it would take, none of the three of them could calculate. How is it? Stay and work. I'll pay you back very soon. Cheng Wu tried to entice him. His eyes were sparkling as he looked at Dongfang Lin, as if he was looking at a money tree. All right. However, can I meet Leng Ruoxue first? Dongfang Lin compromised. In fact, he could also arrange for a subordinate to go home and withdraw the money, but this matter would be exposed if he did so. However, he really did not want too many people to know about such an embarrassing matter. After all, he was just working to pay off his debts, and time would pass very quickly. After all, to gods, 1,000 years was just the blink of an eye. Hearing Dongfang Lin agree, Cheng Wu's gaze towards him became even gentler. However, he could not make the decision to see his own miss. At the thought of this, Cheng Wu said, "You should work to pay off your debts first. Young miss doesn't have a good impression of people who owe her a debt. We can talk about this later." All right then. Dongfang Lin had no choice but to agree. Just like that, Dongfang Lin and his two subordinates began their career. Naturally, Cheng Wu would not hide such a thing from Leng Ruoxue and the others. After hearing Cheng Wu's description, Uncle Long rushed in front of him and asked, "What did you say that person's name was?" Chapter 2151, Then, you still dare to come? 1. He told me his name is Dongfang Lin. Why? Was there a problem? Could he be a spy sent by Lord Cheng's residence? I'll chase him away. Cheng Wu saw Uncle Long's agitated reaction and said angrily. However, he changed his mind and said, "No. He still owes us money for our meal. Even if we want to chase him away, we have to wait for him to pay for the meal." Upon hearing this, several black lines slid down Uncle Long's forehead. He couldn't help but secretly complain. This brat is really into money. But this is also good. Only a man like this can run the house. Kid, he wasn't sent by the Divine Master's estate, but he's related to them. Uncle Long said with a mysterious expression. Then we'll really have to chase him away. Cheng Wu said. No. He can't be chased out because he's Sir Yes' subordinate, Uncle Long said hurriedly. This brat was really impatient. He didn't even let him finish speaking, causing the sense of mystery he had accumulated for a long time to be wasted. What? Uncle Long's words left everyone dumbfounded. Uncle Long, are you sure? Leng Ruoxue confirmed. I'm sure, I'm very sure. Uncle Long nodded heavily. Then, he explained Dongfang Lin's identity and his relationship with Dongfang Yu in detail. No wonder he said he wanted to see Miss. Cheng Wu mumbled to himself after hearing this. Miss, will you see him? Cheng Wu asked. He's gone. Leng Ruoxue said with certainty. Ah. Leng Ruoxue's answer left everyone dumbfounded once again. Upon seeing their expressions, Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly and said, he didn't tell me that he was master's subordinate, and he also owes our Yao clan house money. Even if we want to see him, we should wait until he pays back the money first. What do you think? What Shuer said makes sense. The master of the Ning family said first. Girl, don't be in a hurry to see him, let him suffer a little first. Tsang suggested. Should we tell Bing Yao and Qin Yang about this? Uncle Long couldn't help but ask when he heard everyone's opinions and his ideas. You can tell them, but don't let them go to Dongfang Lin now. Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. I'll go and talk to them. Cheng Wu volunteered. With that, he left. Not long after, Bing Yao and Qin Yang, who had heard the news, came out of the room as expected. When he saw Leng Ruoxue, Bing Yao said excitedly, Shuer, has Dongfang Lin really come? He didn't dare to believe what he had just heard, so he needed to confirm it. He would only believe it if he heard it from Leng Ruoxue. Someone called Dongfang Lin did come. However, he's currently working at the Yao clan, so I'm not sure if he's master's subordinate. Leng Ruoxue said calmly. It shouldn't be wrong. Bing Yao said. Then, he looked at Leng Ruoxue carefully and said, Shuer, I've seen Dongfang Lin before. Do you want me to confirm it? Sure, but don't let him find out. I don't want to see him now. Leng Ruoxue warned. Don't worry. I won't let him find out. Bing Yao promised and then left the Leng family's main residence with Qin Yang. Seeing the two of them leave, Uncle Long asked curiously, Shuer, I'll go and take a look too. Uncle Long, you can just look at the screen. There's no need to go to the Yao family building to look. Leng Ruoxue helplessly reminded them. They had all treated the light screen as mere decoration. Hee hee. How could I have forgotten about the light screen? Uncle Long said with some embarrassment. After he finished speaking, he immediately ran to the light screen while the others followed behind. However, Leng Ruoxue, the demon and Sung were still sitting in their original seats. After confirming, Master Ning quickly returned to Leng Ruoxue's side and said, Shuer, it's really him. Aren't you going to take a look? I'm not going. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Actually, she knew it was him. Song and Qing Ju had both confirmed it with her through voice transmission. However, so what if it was him? She didn't know Dongfang Lin and didn't know why he had come, so she naturally wouldn't take the initiative to offer herself. It's fine if you don't want to see him. There's nothing special about Dongfang Lin. But Shuer, do you really plan to see him after he pays off the money he owes the Yao clan? That'll probably take a long time. The master of the Ning family said with some sympathy. He pitied Dongfang Lin. He wondered if Shuer's refusal to see him counted as taking her anger out on him. After all, Master Yes subordinates had not performed well in front of Shuer. It's only right and proper to pay back what you owe. Moreover, time is nothing to gods. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. Ah. That's what you say, but I believe that Dongfang Lin will definitely be depressed. The master of the Ning family said with certainty. That's his business, who asked him to eat so many dishes? And those were the cheapest ones in the Yao family building. If it was the most expensive one, he would probably have to sell himself to the Yao clan for the rest of his life. Leng Ruoxua laughed and teased. Hee hee. If he can really work for us for the rest of his life, then we'll be in for it. The master of the Ning family laughed evilly. If Godfather wants him to work for the Yao clan for the rest of his life, isn't that easy? Leng Ruoxua laughed. You have a way. Upon hearing this, Master Ning's eyes lit up and he looked at Leng Ruoxua with anticipation. The items in the Yao clan are all very expensive. If he accidentally breaks one or two of them, I'm afraid he'll have to stay in the Yao clan for the rest of his life. Leng Ruoxua reminded. That makes sense. The master of the Ning family was stunned for a moment before he spoke. However, his sympathy for Dongfang Lin grew even deeper. Although he was the one who had started the conversation, he didn't expect Shuai to take it seriously. At this moment, Tsang, who was in Leng Ruoxua's arms, raised her head and said indifferently, "Girl, leave this to me. I promise he'll pay so much that he won't even be able to wear his underwear." After saying that, he disappeared in a flash. Ah! Senior Tsang is really a man of action. The master of the Ning family couldn't help wiping the cold sweat on his forehead. The sympathy he felt for Dongfang Lin had already turned into a torrential river that flowed endlessly. What bad things have you guys done this time? At this time, Uncle Long also came back and glanced at the strange face of the master of the Ning family, asking curiously. I didn't do anything bad. It's just that I wanted Dongfang Lin to work at the Yao clan tower for the rest of his life, so Senior Tsang went to carry out this task. The master of the Ning family told the truth. After he finished speaking, he felt cold sweat flowing down his body. Let him work in the Yao clan building for the rest of his life. This was a good idea. Dongfang Lin's intelligence is well known in the divinity. Ao Jia, who happened to be walking over, heard this and expressed his opinion. After hearing this, Uncle Long pondered for a moment and said, that's a good idea. However, Dongfang Lin isn't easy to fool. If we use force, he might not yield. Uncle Long, don't worry. Tsang has a way. Leng Ruoxua said confidently. Chapter 2152, Then, you still dare to come? 2. Hearing her words, Uncle Long and the others didn't have anything to worry about. However, Dongfang Lin didn't realize at all that he was about to be tricked. At the same time, Bing Yao and Qing Yang, who had left the Leng family's main residence, had also arrived at the foot of the Yao family building. However, they had promised Shuai that they would not be discovered by Dongfang Lin, so they walked to the front of the Yao family building and took a disguise pill. As soon as the two of them walked into the Yao family building, they saw Dongfang Lin standing in the middle of the hall, wearing a very comical apron to welcome guests. The two of them tried their best not to laugh out loud, but they were already laughing inside. When Dongfang Lin saw the two of them, he didn't doubt them. He immediately came up to them with a red face and said, "This way, please." At this moment, Dongfang Lin was in an extremely awkward position because his current position was the same as the waiter who had received him before. However, after he arrived, this position belonged to him. Furthermore, because he was very restrained in the beginning, Chengwu thought of this method to let him stand in the Yao family building's main hall with this image so that he could train his own face and avoid being embarrassed. As a result, he was in for a tragedy. Not only did he have to receive many guests every day, but he also had to endure the strange looks from everyone. This was an experience that he had never experienced before. It could be considered a novel experience. However, he really didn't want this kind of novel experience. Woo, who could save him? Dongfang Lin howled at the sky in his heart, but he couldn't delay his work. More importantly, Chengwu had said that as a member of the service industry, he had to maintain a perfect and friendly smile when he was working. Therefore, although his face was a little stiff, he could not lack a smile. When they saw Dongfang Lin's mouth twitch into an ugly smile, Bing Yao and Qing Yang didn't know what to say. Well, Dongfang Lin looked quite pitiful, but now wasn't the time to pity him. Otherwise, they might be blamed for his anger. Thinking of Tsang, the two of them chose to stay out of this world. Who asked that guy to be so wild and violent? What do you two want to eat? Dongfang Lin asked mechanically after the two of them were seated. I'll have a plate of hot and sour potato strips. The two of them glanced at the menu and ordered the cheapest dish. After all, the two of them were not here to eat. It would be embarrassing if they left without eating anything, so they could only reluctantly order one. Unfortunately, they did not know that Dongfang Lin had a deep hatred for hot and sour shredded potatoes. Otherwise, they would definitely not have ordered this dish. As expected, Dongfang Lin's face immediately darkened when he heard those words. Then, without even saying a word, he left without looking back. Seeing this, Bing Yao and Qing Yang were puzzled. They didn't say anything to make the other unhappy, did they? Why did the other party give them such a hard time? At this moment, another waiter walked up to them and said with an apologetic face, "I'm sorry, he's new here and hasn't gotten into his zone yet. I hope you don't mind if he's been rude." The one who spoke was the waiter who had received Dongfang Lin. "It doesn't matter. We can understand," Bing Yao quickly said after hearing the waiter's words. He couldn't help but think to himself, it would be strange if that guy could enter the state. That's good. In order to compensate the two of you, we'll give you this dish for free today. I hope you enjoy your meal," the waiter said with a smile. The smile on his face was unusually warm, like a spring breeze that warmed people's hearts. The waiter then turned around and left. He then went to find Dongfang Lin and told him the news. Dongfang Lin was dumbfounded when he heard this. Then, he suppressed his anger and asked, "On what basis? Where did I not do well? Why are you putting the blame on me again?" He was very angry because this was not the first time. Every time the waiter gave someone a free meal, he would find him and tell him in private. The consequence of the free meal was that he would bear all the debts and he would have to pay for it. Your service attitude is bad, and you dare to give the customers a hard time. How many times do I have to tell you, we are in the service industry. You have to treat guests like family, but you. The customer didn't say anything bad, but once you heard that someone ordered the hot and sour shredded potato, you immediately changed your face. As usual, which customer would dare to come? The reputation that our Yao clan has built up with great difficulty cannot be destroyed in your hands, so it's not an injustice for you to pay for this loss, right? The waiter told the truth and reason. I'm advising you. Don't always hold grudges against the shredded potatoes. After all the vegetables in the past had already entered your stomachs. If you want to blame someone, blame your greedy mouths. What does it have to do with the shredded potatoes? He was eaten by you, and now he has to take the blame for you. How wronged would that be? The waiter continued, not giving Dongfang Lin any chance to speak. After hearing all this, Dongfang Lin couldn't refute it at all. This fact made Dongfang Lin very depressed. However, after saying all this, the waiter immediately turned around and left. Before he left, he carefully reminded Dongfang Lin and the other two, and warned them that if they did not do a good job, their money would be deducted. As for the dishes that Bing Yao and Qing Yang had ordered, they naturally didn't need Dongfang Lin to deliver them. As soon as the waiter left, Dongfang Lin's two subordinates immediately put on bitter faces and looked at Dongfang Lin pitifully. "My lord, how long will we have to do this? I'm peeling potatoes so much that I'm about to throw up." The potatoes had piled up into a mountain in front of them, and they had been peeling them for a few days. They really didn't want to continue living like this. "What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and get to work. As long as you pay off the money you owe, we can leave." Dongfang Lin heard his subordinates' complaints and quickly reproached him. In fact, he also wanted to leave. However, they could not leave just like that. Otherwise, how would he be able to face Leng Ruoxue in the future? Hence, he could only endure it. He even held on to a glimmer of hope that he might meet Leng Ruoxue if he stayed here. He felt a little better thinking about this. At this time, one of his subordinates suggested, "Master, if this really doesn't work, I'll go back and withdraw the money. We don't want to work here anymore. Withdraw money? What are you going to say when you go back? We owe them money for their meals. Is this something to be proud of? Hearing this, Dongfang Lin's eyes immediately widened. Wu, if he wanted people to know about this, he would have told them to go back and get the money. However, he didn't want too many people to know about such an embarrassing thing, so he would rather work here to pay off his debts. The subordinate was speechless. Don't do that, hurry up and get to work. Dongfang Lin urged. Yes. The two subordinates resigned themselves to their fate. If their master was not in a hurry, there was no use in them being anxious. Moreover, it was really embarrassing to eat without money to pay. Following that, Dongfang Lin's two subordinates immediately buried their heads in their work. Chapter 2153, You Still Dare to Come Here? 3. At this moment, another waiter walked up to Dongfang Lin and pointed at him, Come with me to the storeroom to get some plates. Moving plates? Dongfang Lin blinked in confusion. Why are you moving plates? Are there not enough plates? Besides, a small thing like moving plates doesn't need two people, right? He was very puzzled, but he still followed the waiter. The waiter brought Dongfang Lin to the storeroom and pointed at the small mountain of plates that took up more than half of the storeroom. You should check the plates first. Then, we'll take them out together. Oh. Dongfang Lin nodded. This was very easy. He could find out the number with a sweep of his divine sense. However, when he wanted to use his divine sense, he found that his divine sense was restricted. He couldn't use his divine sense here. This fact puzzled him no matter how much he thought about it. I can't use my divine sense here. Dongfang Lin turned around and asked with a puzzled expression. We cannot. Otherwise, I wouldn't have called you here to help. The waiter said calmly. I see. After hearing the waiter's explanation, Dongfang Lin's question finally had an answer. Then, he resigned himself to his fate and began to count the plates. After an unknown amount of time, Dongfang Lin began to feel a little dizzy. At this moment, he was the only one left in the storeroom. As for the waiter who had come with him, he had been called away earlier and had not returned yet, so the task of counting the plates had fallen to him. After counting for so long, he was about to vomit. He had just sat down in the empty space of the warehouse and was about to take a rest when he suddenly heard a crash. He looked up and saw a pile of plates half the height of a man falling down in a magnificent manner less than half a meter in front of him. All the plates were broken into two pieces. Seeing this, Dongfang Lin was dumbfounded. How did this happen? Why did these plates break by themselves? Just as Dongfang Lin was puzzled, the waiter returned. Seeing this, he immediately jumped up in shock and yelled, You actually broke so many plates. As he shouted, a group of people ran in noisily. The group of people looked at the broken plate on the ground, then all looked at Dongfang Lin with hostility. Dongfang Lin's scalp suddenly went numb. Did they really think that they were the ones who had broken the plate? With that in mind, Dongfang Lin said very indifferently, These plates have nothing to do with me. I didn't break them. Who else could it be? You were the only one here just now. When the waiter heard Dongfang Lin's words, he immediately jumped up and roared in rage. It really wasn't me. Dongfang Lin was really at a loss for words. He felt extremely aggrieved. What the hell was this? Was it because there was no one else here that he had to take the blame? The more Dongfang Lin thought about it, the more indignant he felt. Even when he was being hunted down by the fog, he had never suffered such a grievance. But today, he was experiencing the feeling of being wronged. This feeling was really. Who is that? It can't be that the plate broke on its own. The waiter shouted. It really did shatter on its own. Dongfang Lin sighed. However, he had also understood that no one would believe his words. I want to see Steward Cheng, he said after some thought. Don't even think about reneging on this matter when you see Steward Cheng. The waiter shouted angrily. However, he still brought Dongfang Lin to see Cheng Wu. In the same private room, Cheng Wu and Dongfang Lin were still sitting face to face. After listening to the waiter's report, Cheng Wu remained silent. However, his eyes would occasionally glance at Dongfang Lin, as if waiting for him to speak first. Manager Cheng. I really didn't break those plates, I'm not that clumsy. After a long while, Dongfang Lin finally calmed down a little and began to talk about martial arts with a calm expression. Of course I believe you, but there was no one else in the warehouse at the time. You said you didn't break it, but you have to show some evidence. Otherwise, I won't be able to answer to the higher-ups. Those plates were all made by Miss and our family's armament masters, so logically speaking, they shouldn't be that easy to break, but they just happened to be broken. Moreover, the price of those plates is very expensive, not something ordinary plates can compare to, do you understand? Cheng Wu said with a faint smile. He was filled with sympathy for Dongfang Lin. If Tsang wanted to scheme against him, how could he escape? Yes. The plate storm that Dongfang Lin had experienced earlier was caused by Tsang. It was self-evident. Evidence? He definitely couldn't. After all, he didn't expect the accident at that time, so how could he have thought of leaving evidence? However, Dongfang Lin could somewhat understand Cheng Wu's words. Following that, he looked at Cheng Wu with a vexed expression and said, I wonder how Steward Cheng plans to deal with this matter. These plates can only be considered as broken by you for the time being. You will compensate for them at a discounted price. When you produce evidence, we can prove your innocence. Cheng Wu said helplessly. Yes. He was helpless. He couldn't understand why the young lady and the others would do something so unnecessary. Wasn't this fellow the subordinate of the young Miss Master? Why did he still scheme against him like this? Wouldn't it be better to just think of a way to take him in? In reality, Leng Ruoxia's actions were largely due to Dongfang Yu and the others' previous actions. This kind of behavior was called taking out her anger on them. Although she didn't teach Dongfang Yu and the others a lesson, it didn't mean that she wasn't angry. Now, Dongfang Yu's younger brother had come to her door of his own accord. How could she let him go so easily? As for Dongfang Lin, he was unlucky enough to take the blame for Dongfang Yu and the others. However, he didn't know about it yet. After hearing Cheng Wu's explanation, Dongfang Lin could only nod helplessly. There was nothing else he could say. However, he was extremely depressed in his heart. He was unparalleled in his wisdom and resourcefulness, so how did he end up in such a situation today? However, when he heard the price of the plates that Cheng Wu had mentioned, he felt his vision turn black and his mind went blank. His ears were buzzing and he was in a daze. This was because Cheng Wu had said that the broken plates were worth about 500,000 top-grade crystals after a discount. This was even after giving him a 20% discount on account of their good relationship. Otherwise, the price would have been even higher. At this moment, Dongfang Lin really wished he could faint. That way, he wouldn't have to face this huge debt. However, after the daze, he was unusually clear-headed, and more importantly, a god wouldn't faint so easily. However, the villain in his heart was already beating his chest and stamping his feet in grief and indignation, crying bitterly and shedding tears. Dongfang Lin's part-time career seemed to be far away. However, could he refuse the compensation that the other party asked for? The answer was no. If he really rejected her, he would no longer have the face to appear in front of Leng Ruoxia in the future. Hence, he could only admit that he was unlucky. Time passed. 1 month later, on a certain day, Leng Ruoxia suddenly thought of Dongfang Lin, who was working in the Yao clan's building, so she looked for Cheng Wu to ask. When Leng Ruoxia heard from Cheng Wu that Dongfang Lin's initial uneasiness had turned into his current willingness to do as he pleased, she was very surprised. She did not expect this guy's ability to adapt to things to be so strong. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxia smiled and instructed, "Let Dongfang Lin come here. I'll see him." Yes. When Cheng Wu heard this, he was very happy for Dongfang Lin. After all, the two of them had been getting along quite well during this period of time. Although they were not brothers, they still had a deep friendship. After that, Cheng Wu informed Dong Fanglin of the news. Dong Fanglin patted Cheng Wu's shoulder gratefully and thanked him. Then, he impatiently went up the mountain. After entering the Leng family's main residence, he was led to the garden. Dong Fanglin saw a lady sitting opposite him with a single glance. Needless to say, that lady was Leng Ruoxue. Sitting across from the woman was a handsome, noble, and extraordinary man. Dong Fanglin's eyes lit up. This man was the most outstanding one he had ever seen, aside from Master Yu. Then, Dong Fanglin walked up to the two of them and said with a faint smile, "May I ask if you are Miss Leng?" Dong Fanglin. When Leng Ruoxue heard Dong Fanglin's words, she turned around and nodded her head slightly. Only then did she start to size up Dong Fanglin. Dong Fanglin's appearance was 70% similar to Dong Fangyue's. Both of them were good-looking, tall, sturdy, and had outstanding temperaments. As for strength, although they were both reverent god-level experts, Dong Fanglin was clearly inferior to Dong Fangyu. In an instant, Leng Ruoxue had finished sizing up Dong Fanglin and came to a conclusion. At the same time, Dong Fanglin was also sizing up Leng Ruoxue. The woman in front of him was indeed devastatingly beautiful, and Leng Ruoxue, who was right in front of him, was obviously more beautiful than what he had seen in the image. She had the aura of a king and her talent was rather demonic. Hence, he was very satisfied with Leng Ruoxue. However, he could not understand why there was someone among the people around his big brother who would look down on Leng Ruoxue. After sizing each other up, Leng Ruoxue invited Dong Fanglin to take a seat. "I've long heard that Your Excellency Dong Fanglin wants to see me. Is there anything I can help you with?" Leng Ruoxue pretended to be confused. "Ah. Dong Fangyu is my big brother, and am also Master Ye's subordinate. I heard from my big brother that Miss Leng is Master Ye's new disciple, so I thought of coming to see Miss Leng." Although Dong Fanglin did not know if Leng Ruoxue knew his identity, he still answered her directly. "Did you know that Dong Fangyu and the others had some disputes with me before?" Leng Ruoxue asked with a smile. "I know," Dong Fanglin was very honest. "And you still dare to come? Aren't you afraid that he'll take the opportunity to make things difficult for you?" Leng Ruoxue asked out of curiosity. In reality, she had indeed caused him trouble. This fellow had also been working at the Yao clan building for over a month. Chapter 2154, What are you doing here? 1. I'm not afraid. They are them, and I am me. I believe that Miss Leng is not someone who can't distinguish right from wrong. Dong Fanglin said confidently. That's not necessarily true. I'm a vengeful person. Leng Ruoxue said with a half-smile. Ah. Dong Fanglin didn't know how to continue the conversation. He could only look at Leng Ruoxue helplessly. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue laughed in her heart. Then, she asked, "Has Your Excellency Dong Fanglin gotten used to the Yao Clan Tower?" "I'm still all right." Dong Fanglin couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead and thought, is this considered touching on a sore spot? Woo, this was the most embarrassing thing he had ever done in his life. Of course, he was referring to the fact that he did not bring enough money for dinner. Then do a good job. I'll try to pay off my debt as soon as possible and go home. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. I will. Dong Fanglin was very depressed. With just a monthly payment of 5 high-grade crystal stones, who knew how long it would take for him to pay back his debt? He no longer had any confidence, and might have to sell to the Yao clan for the rest of his life. At the thought of this, Dong Fanglin's mind turned and he said, Miss Leng, I wonder if I can change my position. The current job is a bit of a waste of talent for me. Mr. Dong Fanglin, you really don't know what modesty is. Tell me. What position do you want? I'll think about it. Leng Ruoxue glanced at Dong Fanglin and said indifferently. She had heard about Dong Fanglin's intelligence from Uncle Long and the others, so she had no intention of letting him continue working as a waiter. She wouldn't give him what he wanted so easily. Hee hee. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue felt that she was very bad. I can be Miss Leng's think tank and assist Miss Leng in achieving great things. Dongfang Lin quickly said, his expression calm. Do I have something important to do? Leng Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and pretended to be innocent. Ah. Dongfang Lin's words were stuck in his throat because of Leng Ruoxue's innocent expression. After a long while, he took a few deep breaths before he said, Miss Leng, don't you want to avenge Master Yu? With my advice, it'll definitely be like adding wings to a tiger for Miss Leng. Of course, I will avenge my master. But I want to know if you are only representing yourself or Dongfang Yu and the others. Leng Ruoxue asked calmly. One could not tell from her expression that she was happy or angry. She did not seem to be overjoyed by Dongfang Lin's words at all. Seeing this, Dongfang Lin was even more satisfied with Leng Ruoxue. However, this little girl did not seem to be too satisfied with him. This fact gave him a headache and made him feel helpless. I'm representing myself for now, but I'll think of a way to convince my brothers. Dongfang Lin said after some thought. Miss Leng, I am very sincere. It is not entirely because I owe you a huge debt that I made such a decision. In fact, I came to see Miss Leng for this purpose. I just didn't expect that the visit to the Yao family building would cause me to owe a huge amount of money. Therefore, it took me so long to see Miss Leng. Now it seems that I can only use this method to pay off my debt. I hope Miss Leng doesn't mind. Dongfang Lin explained. Seeing Dongfang Lin's sincerity, Leng Ruoxue's impression of him improved a lot. Her attitude also softened a lot. She smiled at Dongfang Lin and said, since you have this intention, I will certainly fulfill your wish. However, if Dongfang Yu and the others are really unwilling, you don't have to force them. I don't lack those people by my side. I understand. Dongfang Lin nodded. It seemed like Leng Ruoxue was someone who could clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred. He then stood up and bowed to Leng Ruoxue. He said respectfully, this subordinate greets the young master. He had addressed Leng Ruoxue as young master, which meant that he had acknowledged her status and considered himself a subordinate. In fact, Dongfang Lin had already planned to do so before he came. However, he would only make his decision after meeting Leng Ruoxue. He had not mentioned this to anyone before he came. Now that he had met Leng Ruoxue, he was very satisfied with her and was willing to assist a young master like her in taking revenge for Master Yu. Hence, in order to make his stand clear, he immediately made his stand clear. As for his elder brother and the others, he still had to find a way to convince them. No need to be so polite. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Dongfang Lin was a sensible person. It's what I should do, I can't abandon my etiquette. Dongfang Lin was very insistent on this. After all, he would not be the only one by Leng Ruoxue's side in the future. It was better to follow the rules, in case some people didn't take Leng Ruoxue seriously and things would get messy. There's no need to do this in private. Leng Ruoxue compromised when she saw Dongfang Lin's stubbornness. Yes, young master. Dongfang Lin nodded and then sat down again. Following that, Leng Ruoxue introduced the evildoer to him. Of course, she did not reveal the identity of the evildoer. After that, she sent someone to invite Uncle Long and the rest out. Bing Yao and Qing Yang could finally see Dongfang Lin in the open. They were both very happy. After all, they were old friends and had many common topics. However, Dongfang Lin was a smooth person. In a short time, he had become very friendly with everyone and even talked about everything. After chatting for a long time, Dongfang Lin finally bid farewell to Bing Yao and the others reluctantly and returned to the Yao family house at the foot of the mountain. After Dongfang Lin left, Uncle Long asked Leng Ruoxue in a low voice, "Little girl, Dongfang Lin is not bad. He's much stronger than those people. Uncle Long, are you satisfied with him?" Leng Ruoxue said. Of course I'm satisfied. Back then, with Dongfang Lin's identity and status, it was not easy for me to meet him. I didn't expect to be so close to him now. Uncle Long said excitedly. Back then, his strength was not bad. Although he had a little fame, he was still far from being comparable to the brothers Dongfang Lin and Dongfang Yu. These two people could be considered as his idols. Of course, their position in his heart was definitely not as high as Master Yu. Yup. I didn't expect that either. The master of the Ning family also said emotionally. When Leng Ruoxua saw their excited expressions, she smiled helplessly. Uncle Long, godfather, calm down. He's one of us from now on. Are you afraid that you won't have a chance to get to know him? Hee hee. We were too excited. However, Dongfang Lin does have better eyes than his big brother. He can see the good in Shuai. Uncle Long praised. It's not that Dongfang Yu didn't see it. It's just that the people around him aren't too satisfied with me and don't want to be under me. Leng Ruoxue was well aware of this. I wonder how Dongfang Lin is going to convince Dongfang Yu and the others. Uncle Long was looking forward to it. Hearing this, Leng Ruoxue thought to herself. Actually, from her perspective, Dongfang Yu was still easy to convince. It was just that some people on his side were more stubborn. It seemed like she had to kill the chicken to warn the monkeys. Chapter 2155, What are you doing here? 2. With this thought in mind, when Dongfang Lin told her that he wanted to make a trip back to Black Fog City, Leng Ruoxue immediately decided to bring the demon, Song, and Uncle Long with him. The master of the Ning family and the rest would stay at home to keep watch. Along the way, Leng Ruoxue felt two extremely unfriendly gazes following her. When she turned her head, those two gazes immediately disappeared. However, she was very clear who those gazes belonged to. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue smiled at Dongfang Lin and said, Lin, why don't your two subordinates continue working at the Yao family building? Otherwise, when will you be able to pay off the money you owe? Ah! A few drops of cold sweat rolled down Dongfang Lin's forehead when he heard this. He wanted to cry but had no tears in his heart. Could you not mention this? It wasn't easy for her to take leave and go home, so why did she have to remind him of this? Dongfang Lin was very depressed. He looked at Leng Ruoxue with a wronged expression and did not say anything. However, before he could express his opinion, his two subordinates could not help but jump out. Humph. It was just that little bit of money. I'll return it to you when we return to Black Fog City. One of the subordinates shouted angrily. However, with his master here, he still restrained himself. But even so, Dongfang Lin's head still hurt when he heard him say this. Damn it! How dare he say such words in front of Leng Ruoxue? Shut up! Is there a place for you to speak? Dongfang Lin's eyes swept over the subordinate as he reproached. The subordinate's heart trembled at these words and he immediately fell silent. Lin, I'm very democratic. Since your subordinates have something against me, let them say it. Don't stop them. I still want to hear what they have to say. Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. There's no need for that, right? Dongfang Lin said fearfully. If Leng Ruoxue were to hear their inner thoughts and dissatisfaction, they would be in deep trouble. Even though he had not spent much time with Leng Ruoxue, he was clear that this girl would definitely seek revenge for every single flaw. It's necessary. As a leader, it's important to listen to the opinions of the people below. This is beneficial to the leader. Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. Then, her beautiful eyes turned to her two silent subordinates. However, after receiving Dongfang Lin's warning, they didn't dare to speak carelessly anymore. Leng Ruoxue was a little disappointed. Then, everyone continued on their way. On a certain night, Leng Ruoxue and the rest were camping in the wilderness as usual. Of course, the few of them stayed in the house that she always carried with her. However, in the middle of the night, it suddenly started to rain heavily. They had not rested yet, so they sat in the garden and listened to the sound of the rain. At this moment, rustling sounds could be heard from the rain. Leng Ruoxue and the rest immediately went on high alert. Then, everyone saw that the sky above the transparent roof was covered by a dark Massachusetts, so many snakes. One of Dongfang Lin's subordinates exclaimed. He could feel his hair standing on end because he hated snakes the most. Where did all these snakes come from? Dongfang Lin's scalp went numb when he saw the black python flicking its tongue. He especially saw the red light that flashed across the giant snake's cold black eyes from time to time. He felt even more disgusted with these snakes because they were obviously being controlled by someone. He just didn't know whether these snakes were coming for him or Leng Ruoxue. But no matter who it was, they seemed to be in trouble. Don't worry about them, they can't get in. Leng Ruoxue glanced at the giant python on the roof and said calmly. They can't get in, but we can't get out either. Another subordinate reminded. What if I say we can get out? Leng Ruoxue looked at the subordinate with a smile that was not a smile. Ah. Then hurry up and get out. It's no joke to be treated as a meal by these snakes. Moreover, these snakes are obviously poisonous. The subordinate continued. After he finished speaking, he glanced at the triangular heads of the snakes on the roof and broke out in cold sweat again. It's raining so heavily outside. Are you sure you want to go out now? Leng Ruoxue raised her brows and asked. Well. Let's wait until the rain stops tomorrow. The subordinate looked at the sky and said with a lingering fear. At this time, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky outside, accompanied by thunder. Instantly, he was so scared that he quivered and his face turned pale. This subordinate of yours is quite timid. Leng Ruoxue replied indifferently. Then, she continued, it's getting late, everyone should rest early. With that, Leng Ruoxue pulled the evildoer away. Seeing this, Uncle Long also returned to his room. After they left, only Tsang, Dongfang Lin, and his two subordinates were left in the garden. However, at this moment, Dongfang Lin was still not aware of Tsang's identity, and no one had told him about it. Hence, in his eyes, Tsang was just a cute little beast. Especially now that Tsang had transformed into a little rabbit who was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Dongfang Lin only treated it as Leng Ruoxue's pet. After holding Tsang in his arms and stroking its soft fur, Dongfang Lin said to his two subordinates with great dissatisfaction, what an embarrassment, you're even more timid than a girl. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have brought you guys along. My lord. His two subordinates felt very wronged, but Dongfang Lin didn't really want to see them at this moment. He immediately snapped, disappear from my sight immediately. I don't want to see you now. Yes. The two subordinates replied gloomily, then left the garden. After they left, Tsang's bright eyes kept looking at Dongfang Lin, making him feel uncomfortable. To be honest, he was not very familiar with this little rabbit because most of the time, it was in Leng Ruoxue's arms. However, Yichen seemed to be very dissatisfied with it and would stare at it when he had nothing to do. This was why this rabbit had attracted its interest. How much courage and guts did it take to fight for her master's fiancé's favor? Little fellow, what nonsense are you thinking in your heart? Azure said in a displeased tone as he sensed Dongfang Lin's thoughts. Arg! Are you talking to me? Dongfang Lin was a little overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. This was the first time the rabbit had spoken to him. However, why did it call him little fellow? This form of address made him extremely depressed. Nonsense. If I'm not talking to you, am I talking to a ghost? Don't you see that there are other people here? I really don't know how you became famous back then. I really couldn't tell how smart you were. Tsang started to despise him. Ah. Tsang's sharp words left Dongfang Lin dumbfounded. He didn't know how to continue. It seemed like this rabbit didn't like him. After a long time. Only then did Dongfang Lin come up with the words. That little rabbit, can you not call me little guy? You're the little guy, okay? As for Leng Ruoxue's pet, he had to love her as much as he loved her. At least, that was what he thought. Otherwise, if this little beast were to insult him in front of Leng Ruoxue, who would he cry to? Therefore, he did not dare to offend this rabbit. Chapter 2156, What are you doing here? 3. From this point of view, he was smarter than Dongfang Yu and the others. He also knew how to judge the situation. To put it bluntly, he would not look down on others and bully others. I'm not a little fellow, so don't call me little rabbit, please call me Tsang. Azure corrected. Alright. Tsang. I'm not a little guy either. I've lived for a long time. Dongfang Lin reminded. As long as the master you in your heart? Azure asked indifferently. That's definitely not the case. Dongfang Lin quickly said. Then that's it. I was born right after that idiot you, so do you think I can call you little guy? Azure continued to ask. If that's the case, you can really call me that. However, Master Yu is not an idiot, so you can't call him that. Dongfang Lin said disapprovingly. In his heart, no one could replace the position of Master Yu. Therefore, he would never allow anyone to talk about Master Yu like this. Furthermore, what made him feel strange was that if it was anyone else who dared to talk about Master Yu like this, he would have already rushed up to teach that guy a lesson. But why was his heart so calm when it was this little rabbit's turn? This shouldn't be the case. He could not understand. I always call him that in front of him. Azure said disapprovingly. Ah. Hearing Tsang's words, Dongfang Lin was once again speechless. Although he didn't quite believe it, he had no way of verifying it. After all, Master Yu had already passed away many years ago. Forget it, he shouldn't be calculative with a little beast. At most, he would talk to Leng Ruoxue in private tomorrow and ask her to take care of her little beast. With this in mind, Dongfang Lin didn't refute Tsang to prevent the little beast from flying into a rage out of humiliation. The next morning, Dongfang Lin went to look for Leng Ruoxue as soon as he could and told her about this matter with a serious expression. After Leng Ruoxue heard this, she did not say anything for a long time. However, the demon beside her said indifferently, Azure is right, Yu is a big idiot. On this point, his thoughts were the same as Tsang's. Hearing this, Dongfang Lin was a little confused. Did Master Yu offend them? Why were they all like this? Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue smiled helplessly. She had never told Dongfang Lin about the true identity of Genius and Tsang. Firstly, she had always kept a low profile and did not like to talk about such things. Secondly, she did not wish for the people around Dongfang Lin to be loyal to her because of Genius and Tsang's identity. Hence, she did not want to reveal her trump card before she had obtained their approval. However, it seemed that it was time for her to reveal a little. Otherwise, if the demon and Tsang were to reveal their dissatisfaction with her master one day, Dongfang Lin and the others would have a conflict with them because of this. That was not something she wanted to see either. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue glanced at Dongfang Lin and said calmly, Lin, Tsang's identity is a bit special. If this was said by someone else, I wouldn't let it go. However, Tsang has this qualification. Hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, even if Dongfang Lin had thousands of questions, he could not ask them. After all, if Leng Ruoxue was willing to tell him, she would tell him even if he did not ask. But now, it seemed like Leng Ruoxue had no intention of telling him. Therefore, he didn't want to be nosy. Immediately, Dongfang Lin took the initiative to change the topic. Oh right, Shuer, there seems to be more and more snakes gathering outside. Should we wait for a while before we attack, or should we go out and deal with them now? Have breakfast before going. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. All right, he said. Dongfang Lin nodded. After spending time with Leng Ruoxue these few days, he knew that she was very particular about food. She had to eat all 3 meals a day. Thus, he had also benefited a lot from her. Recently, he had been eating so much that he had forgotten about home. Hence, he was 100% in favor of Leng Ruoxue's suggestion. After breakfast, Leng Ruoxue calmly pulled the demon to the garden to rest. Their relaxed and indifferent appearance made Dongfang Lin's 2 subordinates anxious. However, they did not dare to speak rashly after being warned by Dongfang Yao. After a long while, Leng Ruoxue stood up and said to everyone present, "Let's go out and deal with those giant pythons." With that, Leng Ruoxue took out a few antidotes and distributed them to the crowd. Then, she pulled the evildoer and left the garden. The moment she opened the door, Leng Ruoxue could smell a stench coming from the room. The ground in front of her was covered with black pythons wriggling about. The roof and the nearby trees were also covered with pythons. At this moment, these pythons were sticking out their half-foot-long wicks and staring at them with a pair of cold, red eyes. It was indeed a disgusting sight. Not only that, but these giant pythons were also shrouded in a light gray mist, which dyed the sky dark. This mist was the poison released by the giant pythons. All of a sudden, a thick black tail came flying towards Leng Ruoxue and the demon. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue sent out a wind blade and sliced the thick tail into two. The other half of the tail fell to the ground and wriggled. It quickly became a delicacy that the giant pythons fought over. The giant python that had its tail cut off was even more embarrassed and angry. It flicked its tongue and pounced towards Leng Ruoxue. Upon seeing this, Leng Ruoxue did not hesitate to reveal her natal flame. The moment that tiny flame appeared, the furious giant python actually had an instinctive reaction to retreat. However, it could not help but charge towards Leng Ruoxue. In the blink of an eye, the giant python that had stuck its head out was burned to ashes by Leng Ruoxue's natal flames. Following that, Leng Ruoxue's fair hand gently waved and the flames instantly jumped onto the giant pythons on the ground. The giant pythons did not even have the time to cry out in alarm before they were turned into ashes. Seeing this, Dongfang Lin's two subordinates' mouths were half open in disbelief. This is too amazing. Following that, they saw Leng Ruoxue giving the same treatment to the giant pythons on the trees and on the roof. They were instantly turned into ashes. Instantly, the two of them looked at Leng Ruoxue with respect. For the rest of the journey, the two of them listened to Leng Ruoxue's every word and were even more attentive to her than to Dongfang Lin. This could be considered a pleasant surprise for Leng Ruoxue. She had never thought that by eliminating the giant pythons controlled by someone, she could win the hearts of these two people. In reality, Dongfang Lin's two subordinates' reaction was normal. One should know that in the firmament, only the strong were respected. Leng Ruoxue's performance when she dealt with the giant python had deeply shocked the two of them. Hence, they immediately changed their attitude and acknowledged Leng Ruoxue. Previously, they were not willing to submit to Leng Ruoxue, mostly because they did not believe in her strength. They felt that she was a woman and had only cultivated for a short time. Even if she was the Master Ye's disciple, they did not believe that Leng Ruoxue had the qualifications to lead them to avenge Master Yu. In addition, the people around Dongfang Yu were dissatisfied with Leng Ruoxue, which more or less affected them. It was precisely because of this preconceived notion that they had such a contemptuous attitude towards Leng Ruoxue. But now, the two of them were completely convinced by Leng Ruoxue. She was indeed Master Ye's disciple. As expected, he was intrepid. After this incident, Leng Ruoxue understood one thing more clearly. If she wanted to subdue them, she could only use violence. Whatever affinity, favorable impression, and the like were useless in front of these people. They only believed in their fists. With such an understanding, Leng Ruoxue had a plan for what she was going to do next. Shuer, Black Fog City is up ahead. Dongfang Lin said excitedly as he looked at the tall city wall that was just a short distance away. This Black Fog City is so far from the land of demons. Leng Ruoxue sighed. They had been away from home for more than a month and they had finally reached their destination. It had not been easy. "Miss, it's safer to stay away," one of his subordinates hurriedly said. "You're right, let's enter the city," Leng Ruoxue said impatiently. "Let's go." Dongfang Lin nodded. Then, he led Leng Ruoxue and the rest into Black Fog City. As she walked on the streets of Black Fog City, Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes sized up the buildings in the city. She could not help but think to herself, the population in Black Fog City is unusually small. There wasn't even a guard at the city gate, so he wondered if there was a city lord here. Seeing through Lin Ruoxia's thoughts, Dongfang Lin smiled and said, "This Black Fog City is currently without a master. Shuer, do you want to make a city master?" "Don't." Lin Ruoxia rejected. Not only was this place cold, but it was also in a remote location. A normal person would not make this their territory. However, this place was extremely safe. No wonder Dongfang Lin and his men had been hiding here for so many years without being discovered. AI. It's such a pity. Dongfang Lin pretended to be disappointed. However, Lin Ruoxia ignored him and started to admire the ice sculptures in the city with great interest. He felt a little helpless when he saw this. His presence was too low. Shuer was actually ignoring him. Dongfang Lin led the way gloomily. Not long after, Lin Ruoxia and the rest followed him to a small courtyard. Then, Lin Ruoxia saw the underground city that Dongfang Lin had mentioned. "What do you think? This place is not bad, right?" Dongfang Lin said proudly when he saw Lin Ruoxia's shocked expression. Lin Ruoxia glanced at the smug Dongfang Lin and said, "It's passable." After she finished speaking, she walked in directly. Dongfang Lin felt even more depressed when he heard these 3 words. However, his 2 heartless subordinates who had been subdued by Lin Ruoxia and became her loyal dogs were secretly laughing in their hearts. It seemed like their master could not do anything to their young lady. At this moment, Dongfang Lin and the others who had yet to enter the underground castle suddenly heard a cry of alarm. "What are you doing here?" Chapter 2157, Arrangements, 1. Dongfang Lin and the others entered the room immediately upon hearing that. At this moment, Lin Ruoxia and Yaoji were staring at each other. Yaoji was still angry and was extremely surprised to see Lin Ruoxia. However, Lin Ruoxia only smiled faintly and didn't say anything. "Hey! I'm talking to you. What are you doing here? I didn't expect you to actually find your way here. I've really underestimated you." "Humph. However, it's useless even if you find us here. We won't easily acknowledge you." Yaoji asked cautiously. She had been brooding over the fact that she had previously offended Lin Ruoxia, but when she saw that Dongfang Yu and the others did not blame her, she became fearless. She even felt that they might have the same thoughts as her, that they were not willing to lower themselves to be under a little girl, even if she was the Master Yes disciple. In reality, the reason why they didn't value Lin Ruoxia so much was not only because of her young age, but also because they weren't familiar with her. Lin Ruoxia was only accepted as a disciple after Master Yes' death. As a result, her status as a disciple was greatly reduced. Thus, when they first met Lin Ruoxia, they were very dissatisfied with her. In their hearts, the most suitable candidates for the young master position were naturally Bing Yao or Qin Yang. Unfortunately, both of them admitted that they could not take on the heavy responsibility. This made them very angry, so they decided not to choose either of them. At least, that was what Yaoji thought. "I'm not here to find you." Finally, Lin Ruoxia spoke with a faint smile. She was rather helpless about Yaoji's self-confidence. She couldn't understand why her master would have such a brainless woman by his side. However, this brainless woman seemed to be quite loyal to her master. Of course, she might have other thoughts about her master. Moreover, after not seeing her for so many days, Yaoji's scarred face was now smooth and without a trace of scars. It seemed that women really loved beauty. "Humph. Who are you trying to fool? If you're not looking for us, then who are you looking for?" Yaoji clearly didn't believe Lin Ruoxia's words. When she said this, her beautiful face was filled with mockery. "I was the one who brought her here," Dongfang Lin said indifferently. "You? Sir Dongfang Lin, why did you bring this woman here?" Yaoji questioned him in dissatisfaction after hearing his words. "Miss Lang is a guest that I invited." "Why did I invite her?" "I don't need you to question me," Dongfang Lin said coldly. He had already discussed with Leng Ruoxue not to let these people know that he had already acknowledged her. This way, it would be easier to observe their reactions. Yaoji's dissatisfaction grew when she heard Dongfang Lin's words. However, she didn't dare to say anything to make him angry when she saw that he didn't look too good. After all, although he looked gentle, he was actually even more difficult to talk to than Dongfang Yu. After saying that, Dongfang Lin made a gesture of invitation and led the calm and composed Leng Ruoxue past Yaoji in a grand manner, entering the inner courtyard of the underground castle. After arranging rooms for Leng Ruoxue and the rest, Dongfang Lin immediately went to see Dongfang Yu. After knocking on Dongfang Yu's door, Dongfang Lin loudly said, "Big brother, I'm back. Woo-woo, it feels so good to be home. How is it?" Dongfang Yu asked with concern as he looked at his travel-worn younger brother. He didn't expect his younger brother to be gone for so long. "It's all right," Dongfang Lin said with a smile. He would never tell his big brother that he owed Leng Ruoxue a lot of money and had even worked at the Yao clan tower for a month. This was such an embarrassing matter. This matter was really embarrassing. "Leng Ruoxue didn't chase you out?" Dongfang Yu raised his eyebrows and asked again. "No, I didn't. Who am I? I'm such a gentle, elegant, and handsome man. She can't wait to welcome me. How can she drive me out? She even came here with me. Of course, I'm the one who invited her here," Dongfang Lin said shamelessly. He didn't feel ashamed at all when he said this. Instead, he was very calm. However, Dongfang Yu's face was filled with disbelief when he heard his words. When he heard that Leng Ruoxue was here as well, he stood up from his chair and said in disbelief, "Leng Ruoxue is here too?" "Yup. I brought her here, but we met Yaoji the moment we entered. That woman thought that they were here for her, so she ridiculed them. I guess she must have offended Leng Ruoxue again," Dongfang Lin said with a faint smile. However, his tone revealed a hint of schadenfreude. Moreover, his words were a little exaggerated because the only one who was angry was probably Yaoji. As for Leng Ruoxue, she most likely didn't even care about that woman. That damned Yaoji. Upon hearing Dongfang Lin's words, Dongfang Yu gritted his teeth in anger. Why can't that woman just behave herself? If it weren't for the fact that they had gone through thick and thin together for so many years, how could he have tolerated Yaoji until now? "Big brother, you don't have to be angry for that kind of woman. She has never been content with her place. In the past, she was always jealous of Wu Yan. This is the so-called it's easy to change a country, but it's hard to change a person's nature," Dongfang Lin consoled. Most of the women in the divine realm had a common problem, and that was that they couldn't stand to see women who were more beautiful than themselves. This was mainly caused by their overly inflated self-confidence, especially those women who were stronger. They had the unique thought that they were the only one and also hoped that all the men in the world would revolve around them. Unfortunately, was this possible? Leng Ruoxue really isn't angry? Dongfang Yu asked worriedly. However, Dongfang Lin's words made him agree with him. "I don't think so. If it were me, I wouldn't be angry with Yaoji either. It's too embarrassing." Dongfang Lin was 200% dissatisfied with Yaoji, especially after witnessing Leng Ruoxue's terrifying combat power. He felt that there was no comparison between Yaoji and Leng Ruoxue at all. The funny thing was that Yaoji had treated Leng Ruoxue as her opponent. "It's good that you didn't." Dongfang Yu was relieved. "Big brother, do you want to meet Leng Ruoxue?" Hearing his big brother's seemingly bitter words, Dongfang Lin probed. "Will she see me?" Dongfang Yu was a little embarrassed. The last time, they were chased out by Leng Ruoxue. He had lived for so long, but this was the first time he had such an experience. Hee. I can help you ask." Dongfang Lin chuckled to himself when he saw Dongfang Yu's apprehensive look. He never thought that his big brother would have such a moment. It was truly rare. He really wanted to take a picture of his big brother's conflicted look at this moment for safekeeping. However, he knew that his big brother would definitely not give in. When he thought of his big brother's terrifying means, he gave up on that thought. Can you help me ask? Dong Fangyu was a little uncertain. What should he say to Leng Ruoxue now? He had no idea at all. "Mmh. Just wait for my news," Dong Fanglin said with a smile. After that, he chatted with Dong Fangyu for a while more before leaving. Chapter 2158, Arrangement, 2. After he left, he anxiously went to look for Leng Ruoxue and asked for her opinion. After obtaining her consent, he immediately arranged for them to meet to avoid any more trouble. In the guest hall where Leng Ruoxue was staying, Leng Ruoxue, the demon, Uncle Long, and Sung, who was napping in Leng Ruoxue's arms, were sitting on the chairs calmly. Opposite them were the two brothers Dong Fangyu and Dong Fanglin. However, the two brothers' expressions were completely different. Dong Fanglin was calm and casual, while Dong Fangyu was a little uneasy. However, he had been in a high position for many years, so no matter how nervous Dong Fangyu was, it would not be easy for others to see. Unfortunately, the people he was facing now were all shrewd people, so how could they not see his little emotions? However, Leng Ruoxue and the others kindly pretended not to know anything. Dong Fangyu did not speak, so they did not speak either. For a moment, the atmosphere was unusually heavy. Dong Fanglin was speechless when he saw his big brother staring at Leng Ruoxue and the others. He could not help but shout in his heart, "Big brother! You should say something. Why are you acting like a big girl?" Dong Fangyu's current behavior made Dong Fanglin both angry and anxious. He had been sending messages to his big brother in his heart for a long time. However, Dong Fangyu acted as if he had not heard anything. He remained seated without moving and sized up Leng Ruoxue and the others. Seeing this, Dong Fanglin was extremely anxious, but he couldn't remind her too obviously. Leng Ruoxue was already laughing in her heart when she saw him acting this way. However, Dong Fangyu was just sitting there and looking at them without moving. What was he trying to do? Were there flowers on their faces? Otherwise, how could he be so focused? Although she wanted Dong Fangyu to speak, she did not show it on her face at all. Instead, she appeared even calmer. After a long time, Dong Fangyu finally opened his mouth. That, Dong Fangyu stammered for a long time, but he couldn't say a complete sentence. He was really angry and anxious. What was wrong with him? Wasn't it just a woman? Did he have to be so nervous? He was a reverent god after all. What do you want to say, Your Excellency Dong Fangyu? Leng Ruoxue raised her brows slightly and said in a cold tone. That. I should apologize to Miss Leng first. My subordinates were a little rude to Miss Leng previously. I hope that Miss Leng can be magnanimous and not hold it against them. After thinking for a long time, Dong Fangyu finally mustered his courage and said it. What if I say that I'm a petty person who likes to fuss over things? Hearing Dong Fangyu finally finish his sentence, Leng Ruoxue still did not give him any face. As expected, her words immediately rendered Dong Fangyu speechless. He stared at her with his eyes wide open and was speechless. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue was a little disappointed. It seemed like Dong Fangyu, who was once known as the war god, wasn't someone with a glib tongue. However, it was understandable. One didn't need to talk in a battle. Miss Leng, please don't joke around. Dong Fanglin said helplessly when he saw that the atmosphere had turned cold again. He could tell that Leng Ruoxue was just teasing his big brother. However, it seemed like his big brother was taking it seriously. I'm not joking, I'm just very petty. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Miss Leng, I'm sorry. Dong Fangyu, who had been silent, suddenly said. Your Excellency Dong Fangyu, you really don't have to apologize to me. Every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. I'll naturally settle the score with whoever made me unhappy. Besides, I've also said that although you're master's subordinates, you really don't have to be loyal to me. I won't force you. Leng Ruoxue emphasized. Actually, I am very optimistic about Miss Leng. It's just that many of my subordinates have opposite opinions. I have been through thick and thin with them for many years, so I can't help but assess their thoughts. I hope Miss Leng can forgive me. After hesitating for a while, Dongfang Yu explained with sincerity. I understand. Leng Ruoxue nodded. I will discuss it with them again. Dongfang Yu said. I'm afraid it's useless to discuss. When Leng Ruoxue heard Dongfang Yu's words, she was rather happy. After all, this person was the most powerful among all of Master's subordinates. If she could get his approval, the others would not be a problem. However, it seemed that the others were more difficult to deal with, but Dongfang Yu was the easiest one. Most importantly, they had gone through thick and thin together. Therefore, this kind of relationship was very important to Dongfang Yu. Otherwise, he would not be in such a difficult position. Then what does Miss Leng mean? Dongfang Yu asked as he looked at Leng Ruoxue. They don't trust me because they think I'm young and my strength is not enough to convince the public. Since that's the case, I'll defeat them with my strength. Leng Ruoxue said confidently. In her opinion, those people deserved a beating. However, for the sake of his master, if there was a chance to subdue them, he would still think of a way. After all, if his master was still alive, he would probably be willing to see his subordinates find a good home. Does Miss Leng have any good ideas? Hearing this, Dongfang Lin asked immediately. He was the first person to acknowledge Leng Ruoxue. In addition, his big brother had also given in. He naturally hoped that Leng Ruoxue could become their leader and lead them to avenge Master Yu. Furthermore, he deeply felt that no one was more suitable than Leng Ruoxue. This girl's personality was to his liking. Let's arrange a match. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. She had already thought about it. What's a match? Dongfang Lin asked, confused. This was the first time he had heard of this term. Well, each take a side and display our strength. Of course, the challenge is in a group form. The final winner has the right to raise a condition to the losing side. How about it? Leng Ruoxue asked. Any condition? Dongfang Lin confirmed. As long as it doesn't violate the rules of heaven and earth, and the other party doesn't have to start a massacre, it's fine. Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. How is it? If you have any thoughts, you can also tell me. This is just my initial idea. Leng Ruoxue continued. Since it's a match between the two sides, how many people will each side send? Dongfang Yu asked after thinking for a while. I plan to use 10 games as the base, 8 out of 10 wins. Leng Ruoxue said. Initially, she wanted to win 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 rounds. However, she then thought that if they only competed in these few rounds, there would definitely be people in the other party who would not be convinced. Since that was the case, why not compete in a few more rounds? This way, they would not be able to say anything. So many rounds? But, I thought there were only 3 of you. Dongfang Yu glanced at the people sitting in the room and reminded them. It doesn't matter. The 3 of us are enough to deal with it. Leng Ruoxue said confidently. However, Dongfang Yu felt that Leng Ruoxue was being too arrogant. Chapter 2159, Arrangements, 3. Furthermore, even though Leng Ruoxue was the one who came up with this idea, it was very important to her. If she could really win the tournament, then it would be logical for her to subdue his unruly subordinates. After all, this world revered the strong. Have you all forgotten about me? I can also be considered one. At this moment, Zhang opened his pitch-black eyes and flashed his sharp claws as he spoke in a slightly displeased manner. Ah! The 2 brothers, Dongfang Yu and Dongfang Lin, glanced at Zhang's tiny body and didn't think it had a chance to fight. Besides, everyone knew how strong a rabbit was, what could it do? The 2 brothers didn't think highly of Zhang because they hadn't seen his strength. Of course, Dongfang Yu had seen it before, but the current Zhang and the Zhang back then were completely different, so he didn't expect this rabbit to be the Totoro that had once abused him. If he had known, he would not have dared to underestimate Li Tsang. However, Tsang didn't care about their thoughts at all. He placed his chubby little paws on Leng Ruoxia's fair wrist and asked pitifully in a soft voice, "Girl, can I fight?" "I'll be one." Its claws were starting to itch. "You? If it's you, do you still need to fight? You can annihilate them all by yourself." Leng Ruoxia glanced at Tsang, who was pretending to be pitiful, and felt bad for him. However, she did not reject Tsang directly. Instead, she looked at Dongfang Yu and asked, "Can my beastie fight?" "It's possible, but if beastie fights, it can only be a 1v1. Dongfang Yu said after some thought. There were only 3 people on the other side. If they were to send out 10 people, it would seem like they were bullying the other side. Hence, he had agreed to Leng Ruoxia's idea of sending out beastie. However, Leng Ruoxia could not possibly be planning to send out this rabbit, right? Dongfang Yu was extremely curious. He did not know that Leng Ruoxia had many spirit beasts, but he did not think that this little rabbit was too weak. However, he could only think about it in his heart. He was too embarrassed to say it out loud. After all, he still had to give Leng Ruoxia some face. Hearing Dongfang Yu's words, Leng Ruoxia nodded her head in satisfaction and said, "All right, it's decided then. We'll each take 10 people and have a match. Let's set it to 3 days later." Yes. Dongfang Yu and Dongfang Lin didn't have any objections to this schedule. Then, they discussed the details of the tournament before the 2 brothers left. After they left, Uncle Long looked at Leng Ruoxia with a face full of curiosity. He could not help but ask, "Shuai, when did you come up with this idea?" "Not long ago, but after seeing Dongfang Yu, I finally made the decision." Leng Ruoxia laughed. "Then are you confident?" Uncle Long said worriedly. Dongfang Yu and the others were basically experts who had been famous for many years. They had rich combat experience. It would be difficult to defeat them without any suspense. Of course, if Tsang went up, he would be invincible. However, he did not think that Shuai would let Tsang go up. Therefore, Tsang would be disappointed. Uncle Long, among them, Dongfang Yu is the most powerful. I think we can handle the rest. As for Dongfang Yu, Leng Ruoxia paused. She had not thought of who to send out for the battle, unless Dongfang Yu did not want to fight. However, that was unlikely. "Leave Dongfang Yu to me," the demon said in a light tone. Hearing this, Uncle Long's face was filled with black lines. All of a sudden, he pitied the other party, especially Dongfang Yu. He didn't know how he would feel if he was defeated by a secret mistress in the guise of a divine emperor. He would probably feel defeated. I hope he can withstand this blow. Then leave Dongfang Lin to me. Uncle Long took the initiative to ask. Although he wasn't sure if he could defeat Dongfang Yu, it wouldn't be a problem to defeat Dongfang Lin. After all, Dongfang Lin wasn't the best at fighting. "Uncle Long, you've forgotten that he's one of us." Leng Ruoxia reminded him with a faint smile. She believed that Dongfang Lin would definitely find a good reason not to fight. He. "That's right, leave that old man with the surname Lien to me. I've been wanting to compete with him for a long time." Uncle Long said after thinking for a while. "All right." Leng Ruoxia nodded in agreement. Just then, a white light flashed before their eyes. Huan Chen, who was dressed in white, suddenly appeared again. Huan Chen smiled faintly and glanced at Tsang before turning to Leng Ruoxia. "How could little master forget about me when there's a fight? You're also participating?" Leng Ruoxia looked at Huan Chen with a slight headache. This fellow really came and went without a trace, a representative of unorganized discipline. "If it's possible, of course I want to teach those arrogant guys a lesson," Huan Chen said indifferently. He had been observing the actions of those fellows and was furious in his heart. However, those people had always been occupied by Azure. Therefore, he had never found an opportunity to teach them a lesson. Now that he finally had one, he naturally did not want to let it go. Alright then. However, you can only play one round, said Leng Ruoxue after some thought. Huan Chen was a weapon spirit and was very powerful. Although she didn't dare to say that Huan Chen was a match for Azure, she was very clear that if she didn't restrict Huan Chen, he could still defeat all of them. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but sigh. The artifact spirit was much purer than humans, and it didn't have so many thoughts. It would recognize the other party as its master as soon as it felt that they were pleasing to the eye, unlike some self-conceited humans who were so cowardly. In fact, if it weren't for her master and senior brothers, she wouldn't have gone through so much trouble with Dongfang Yu and the others. After all, she hated trouble the most. One game it is. However, can I choose my own people? Huanchen discussed. You don't have a choice. Dongfang Yu and that Uncle Lien are already taken. Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly. AI. Among those people, only the two of them are the strongest. The others are just small fries, and they will affect my high fighting spirit. Huan Chen said with a regretful expression. If that's the case, you can also choose not to fight. Leng Ruoxue raised her eyebrows and smiled. No. Even the smallest mosquito had meat. I will definitely fight. Huan Chen emphasized. Girl, I also want to fight. Tsang said, unwilling to be outdone. Then, he stared at Leng Ruoxue with his pair of watery black diamonds, as if he would cry if Leng Ruoxue did not agree. You can only play one round. Leng Ruoxue said in a serious tone. Yes, yes. Tsang nodded quickly and buried his head in Leng Ruoxue's arms. Shui, including Senior Tsang and Huan Chen, we only have 5 spots. Who do you plan on sending out? Uncle Long thought of the candidates and continued to ask. The other 5. The 3 of us will each play one game. Leng Ruoxue hesitated for a moment before speaking. The 3 of us are each playing a game. Do you want to take them down with an 8 o'clock score? Ugh. This was too cruel. Shui, they will be shocked. Uncle Long said sympathetically. Hee hee. That's just my personal opinion. What if we accidentally lose one game? Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly. Of course, this was just her humble way of saying it. She didn't think that she would lose. At this moment, a voice rang out in Leng Ruoxue's mind, Miss, let me play one round too. And you? Hearing An Yu's voice, Leng Ruoxue's thoughts turned and she immediately moved him out of the bracelet. Ever since the Dark Knight clan had entered the bracelet, they had spent most of their time cultivating. The Dark Knight clan had always kept a low profile, so Leng Ruoxue had rarely used them. She had not expected that An Yu would be unwilling to be left out and take the initiative to speak up. This had truly surprised her. Seeing An Yu appear in front of them, the black lines on Uncle Long's forehead deepened. Was this guy also going to join the battle? When he thought of this, his sympathy for Dongfang Yu and the others deepened. Shui's side was really full of talents. Although he wasn't too familiar with An Yu, he knew An Yu very well. This fellow's strength was only higher than his. Moreover, An Yu had been cultivating in Shui's spatial space all this time. He had probably recovered to his peak strength long ago, or even stronger. AI. They were all a bunch of awesome people. When he thought of the evildoer, Tsang, Huan Chen, An Yu, and Dongfang Yu, Uncle Long's heart was filled with bitterness. He had thought that he was already quite strong, but compared to these people, he was still not strong enough. Moreover, in front of them, his seniority was the lowest. This fact made the villain in his heart burst into tears. He was so depressed. However, An Yu couldn't empathize with Uncle Long's depressed mood. After he came out, he first called out, Miss. Then he bowed to Tsang and said very politely, An Yu greets Senior Tsang. Yo! It's a little fellow from the Dark Knight race. Hearing An Yu's words, Tsang Qing's eyelids twitched as she indifferently said. Yes, I am. An Yu was a little speechless. However, in front of Senior Tsang, he was indeed a little guy. The dark shadows also has to play around. In that case, there are only 2 empty rounds left. Leng Ruoxue said as she looked at the demon and Uncle Long. Sure, I'll just play 1 round. The demon laughed. Me too, sure, I'll let you perform in the remaining 2 rounds. Well, let them see how bad their taste is, to actually dare to look down on our shuar. This is preposterous. When Uncle Long thought of this, he was so angry that he stomped his feet. Chapter 2160, The Challenge, 1, Leng Ruoxue looked at Uncle Long's angry face and quickly consoled him. Uncle Long, why are you angry with them? They don't like me, but I don't like them. It wasn't worth getting angry at them. In addition, we must make them take the initiative to pledge their allegiance. Otherwise, we'll really be losing out. Uncle Long reminded. Uncle Long, don't worry. After this match, they'll definitely learn their lesson. Leng Ruoxue said confidently. The reason why she agreed to let Tsang and Huanchen fight was to give them a deep lesson. Just as Leng Ruoxue and the others were arranging their battle tactics, Dong Fangyu and the others were also having a discussion. In the living room. When Uncle Lien and the others heard Dong Fangyu's words, they widened their eyes in astonishment and stared at him in disbelief. It was as if he had just said something out of the blue. Why are you guys looking at me? Leng Ruoxue has proposed to hold a competition between both parties. Whoever wants to fight, quickly sign up. The quota is limited, only 10. You guys hurry up. Dong Fangyu urged and then said, I'm definitely going to fight. Count me in, Uncle Lien also said hurriedly. I want to participate too. Yaoji said, not to be outdone. Yes, there are already 3 people. There are 7 more spots. Whoever still wants to participate, quickly sign up. Dong Fangyu continued to urge. Mr. Dong Fanglin, are you not going to sign up? Uncle Lien looked at Dong Fanglin and asked curiously. I've never been interested in fighting and killing. So, I won't be participating in this match. Dong Fanglin said with a smile. In reality, he wanted to represent Leng Ruoxue's side in the battle. However, it was a pity that their relationship could not be exposed too early. Since Dong Fanglin didn't want to participate, no one dared to force him. Your Excellency Dong Fangyu, is it possible for the winning side to make a condition to the losing side? Yaoji confirmed after some thought. Didn't I say that as long as it doesn't go against the rules of heaven and earth, and as long as it doesn't require the other party to go on a killing spree, anything else is fine? Dong Fangyu repeated. He was obviously getting impatient. Then I'm relieved. After confirming it, Yaoji was a little smug. She was thinking about what kind of conditions she would propose to Leng Ruoxue. This time, she had to teach her a good lesson openly. She had to let that little girl know that experience was very important. However, it was a good thing that Leng Ruoxue did not know what she was thinking. Otherwise, she would definitely be depressed. This was something that had not even been set in stone, so the other party was happy too early. Then, people began to sign up one after another. After Dong Fangyu's screening, the list of participants was finally decided. Out of the 10 participants, 4 were Reverend God-level cultivators while Yaoji was the weakest. Yaoji was also a divine emperor, but she was the weakest among them. However, their lineup was rather powerful. Dong Fangyu actually started to worry for Leng Ruoxue when he saw the lineup. Their side was very powerful. Among the 4 Reverend God-level experts, other than him and Uncle Long, 2 of the Reverend God-level experts were from Lin Fan's side. The 6 deity emperors were all his subordinates. Not only that, but they also had rich combat experience. Therefore, it would not be easy for Leng Ruoxue to defeat them. It was precisely because he was worried for Leng Ruoxue that he remained silent after confirming the number of participants. At this moment, Yaoji asked curiously, Your Excellency Dong Fangyu, the competition is 8 out of 10, right? If we don't win 8 matches out of 10, does that mean the match will continue? Then who will fight in the next match? At that time, the candidates for the battle will be chosen from the 10 of us. Dongfang Yu explained. Then, he continued, it's getting late. Everyone, have a good rest and recharge your batteries. You must give it your all in the upcoming matches. After saying that, Dongfang Yu left the living room first. 3 days later, the tournament officially began. Dongfang Lin had arranged for the match to be held in the best training ground in his underground castle. It wasn't even time for the match yet, but the large training ground was already packed with people. Almost everyone who was at home had come to watch this rare competition. After Leng Ruoxue and the rest entered the martial arts practice, they felt everyone's gaze on them. When they saw that there were only 6 of them, everyone started whispering to each other out of curiosity. Aren't there only 10 spots in the competition? They actually only used 6 of them and couldn't find anyone, how pitiful. Someone whispered. However, no matter how soft his voice was, it still reached Leng Ruoxue's ears. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, black lines appeared on her forehead. She thought to herself, what do these people know? It wasn't that she couldn't find him, it was just that there was no need. However, she would not quibble with these people. She would prove it with facts. When they arrived at the seats that Dongfang Lin had prepared for them, Leng Ruoxue and the rest sat down. They were sitting opposite Dongfang Yu and the rest. As for Dongfang Lin, he was in charge of judging the situation. When the competition had officially started, a tall and strong burly man jumped onto the stage that had been built in the middle of the martial arts practice field. His large eyes swept over Leng Ruoxue, who was still sitting down. The burly man revealed a look of contempt, then he slowly opened his mouth, Du Wei. I'll be fighting in the first round. Who's going to fight me? I'll do it. Song lazily stretched in Leng Ruoxue's arms before speaking indifferently. You? A little rabbit? Ha ha ha. You'd better fatten yourself up and leave it for your master to eat. Du Wei laughed so hard that he almost fell out of the ring when he saw how small Tsang was. Seeing the burly man laugh, Tsang Qing closed her eyes and then jumped into the ring. Can we start now? Big Bear. I'll beat you up so badly that even your mother won't be able to recognize you. Azure said with a smile. My name is Dewey, not Big Bear. Du Wei was a little displeased when he heard that the rabbit had changed its name. I didn't say your name was Big Bear. It's just that you look like a bear. Azure said with a smile. Damn it. Don't you try to be glib. Take my move. Du Wei drew his weapon, but before he could gather divine power and pour it into his weapon, he saw a white lightning bolt flash past. Then, everyone heard a loud bang as Du Wei was kicked off the ring by a small rabbit. Moreover, the force of the kick seemed to be a little too strong. Du Wei's back was facing the crowd, and he was half buried in the ground, creating a human-shaped pit on the originally flat ground. Du Wei, on the other hand, lay on the ground for a long time. Ugh! Seeing this, everyone was dumbfounded and dumbfounded. Fuck! Was this still a rabbit? He actually managed to knock a divine emperor into the ground. He was really too violent. Chapter 2161, The Challenge, 2, however, this wasn't the end. Tsang directly jumped from the stage onto the motionless burly man's body, scratching left and right up and down to attack. As expected, he carried out his plan to beat the burly man until his mother couldn't even see him. A moment later, the poor burly man was already covered in wounds and bleeding. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but draw a cold breath, their impression of Tsang's violence deepening. After finishing what he wanted to do, Azure jumped back into the ring and looked down at Dongfang Lin. He asked indifferently, "Little guy, can I end this round?" N. Dongfang Lin nodded. Then, he ordered his men to carry the burly man away and signaled the start of the second round. In the second round, it was Leng Ruoxue's turn to send her people up first. Leng Ruoxue's team sent out Huan Chen, who was dressed in white and as handsome as a banished immortal. Huan Chen walked up to the ring with elegant steps. His pitch-black eyes swept over Dongfang Yu and the others, then he slowly said, "Which one of you wants to fight me?" "I'll do it." The person who had jumped up was a young man. However, seeing that Huan Chen only seemed to be a god king, the man did not think much of him. He even said very generously, "I'll let you make the first move." "Let me make the first move. Don't you regret this?" Huan Chen laughed evilly. Then, he extended a long and powerful leg and kicked the young man opposite him. Bang! With a loud sound, the young man was kicked off the stage by Huan Chen. Fortunately, he fell into the pit created by the burly man and immediately fainted. The human-shaped pit became even deeper. Fuck! How was this possible? He hadn't even made a move. How could he have fainted? How could they fight? The crowd was secretly sighing in their hearts. The scene was somewhat similar to the previous one. The audience, Dongfang Yu, and the others were all dumbfounded. Even Dongfang Lin could not help but break out in cold sweat. He thought to himself, "What are you guys trying to do? At least give the other party a chance to attack. Otherwise, if this continued, wouldn't Big Brother and the others be in for a tragedy?" Dongfang Lin was a little worried for his big brother. If they lost too badly, he didn't know if they would be able to take it. However, Huan Chen also won this round easily. Next, it was Dongfang Yu's turn. This time, it was Yaoji from their side. The moment Yaoji stepped onto the stage, she provoked Len Ruoxue. "Len Ruoxue, do you dare to have a fight with me? What's there to be afraid of?" Hearing this, Len Ruoxue smiled and walked up the stage calmly. At that moment, the two of them were only a few meters apart. Yaoji looked at the dazzlingly beautiful Len Ruoxue, whose beauty could cause the downfall of a city, and the flames of jealousy in her heart burned uncontrollably. She immediately launched her attack. A giant green eagle was released from her hands. This eagle was condensed by her divine power. The eagle first circled the sky a few times before it let out a long cry. Following that, it swooped down and attacked Len Ruoxue's face. Len Ruoxue didn't even try to dodge. She immediately used her divine power to form a dragon and a phoenix. The dragon and phoenix were fiery red in color and exuded a scorching heat. In an instant, the dragon and phoenix wrapped themselves around the giant eagle. The three beasts were entangled. Yaoji was furious when she saw the eagle she had conjured being pincered by two beasts that were also conjured from godly energy. She then shouted at Len Ruoxue, "Humph! You're too despicable. What kind of skill is it to fight 2 against 1? 2 against 1. If you think you're losing out, you can make another one." Len Ruoxue reminded her with a smile. However, her words only made Yaoji even angrier. Damn it! Didn't she want to condense another one to fight against Len Ruoxue's too? However, she had the will but not the strength. It was already very difficult for her to support such a beastie, so she really could not make another one. When she saw that Len Ruoxue did not feel any discomfort when she condensed the two beasts, she was even more envious and jealous. The match went on very quickly. The giant eagle that Yaoji had conjured quickly dispersed under the attacks of the dragon and phoenix. However, Yaoji was unwilling to give up and wanted to continue fighting Len Ruoxue. However, Len Ruoxue did not want to waste any more time on her. After beating Yaoji up cleanly, Len Ruoxue also lifted her leg and kicked Yaoji off the stage. However, she did not use too much strength. At least Yaoji did not end up in a miserable state like the other two. However, she had lost to Len Ruoxue, whom she had always looked down on, so quickly. This fact caused her heart to be in a state of shock. Standing below the ring, Yaoji was burning with anger. His face was dark. She didn't believe that she couldn't do anything to a little girl. However, before she could do anything, the judge announced the end of the competition between the two of them. Yaoji was furious when she heard this. Damn it! She hadn't had the chance to teach Len Ruoxue a lesson yet, so how could she lose the competition so easily? Yaoji felt extremely indignant. However, the judge had already said that their match was over. Hence, she could only stay still for now. However, once she had the chance, she would definitely not let Leng Ruoxue off. She would teach her a lesson. Yaoji pondered. As for Leng Ruoxue, she knew what Yaoji was thinking just by looking at her expression. As such, she couldn't be bothered with her. The next to go up was Uncle Long. It just so happened that Dongfang Youth's representative was Uncle Yan. After the two of them greeted each other in the ring, they began to size each other up. The two old men looked at each other affectionately for a long time. Finally, Uncle Yan couldn't take it anymore and said, "Let's have a good contest." "I can't ask for more." Uncle Long nodded in agreement. Then, he reminded, "Your side has already lost 3 matches." "I know. I don't need you to remind me." Hearing Uncle Long's words, Uncle Yan's face darkened. Seeing this, Uncle Long laughed heartily and sighed. AI. People don't even listen to the truth these days. His face was filled with grievance. Who knew that when Uncle Yan saw Uncle Long's detestable look, he would be even angrier? Then, the furious Uncle Yan made his move. Meanwhile, Uncle Yan was also calmly dealing with the situation. Even after hundreds of exchanges, it was still difficult to determine the victor. However, Uncle Yan was already panting from exhaustion. Although Uncle Long was also struggling, his face still had a relaxed expression. Moreover, everyone watched as he took out a white jade bottle and poured a few pills into his mouth. Immediately, Uncle Long was full of energy again. Chapter 2162, The Challenge, 3, You? Seeing Uncle Long's actions, Uncle Yan became even angrier. He pointed at Uncle Long and his body trembled with anger. "What's wrong?" Uncle Long glanced at Uncle Yan and asked indifferently. "How can you eat a pill?" Uncle Yan was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Was this considered cheating? "Can't I eat it?" Uncle Long blinked innocently and looked at Uncle Yan in confusion. Then, he turned to look at Dongfang Lin. His eyes were red as if he was asking him, "Is there a rule in the tournament that you can't eat pills?" His reaction made Dongfang Lin break out in a cold sweat. However, it seemed that more and more people were looking at him. Hence, he could not play dumb even if he wanted to. That consuming medicinal pills is not against the rules of the competition. After clearing his throat, Dongfang Lin said. Then, he turned his gaze away from the two people on the stage. However, he kept his eyes on the two people's match. His words made Uncle Yan so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he thought about it carefully. There was indeed no rule in any competition that forbade participants from eating medicinal pills. With this knowledge, Uncle Yan finally forced himself to calm down. Then, he also ate a pill to replenish the divine power he had used up. However, his heart ached. They had been locked up for too long, and they had almost no good things on them. This pill was something that he had saved up with great difficulty. Unfortunately, it had been used now, and it was used in such an ordinary competition. No matter how he thought about it, he really felt that he had suffered a great loss. Wait a minute. How did the other party have so many pills? If he didn't see wrongly, the fellow opposite him seemed to have eaten a handful of medicinal pills. Wasn't this even more wasteful? Why do you have so many pills? When he thought of this question, Uncle Yan asked without any hesitation. Do you want to know? I'll tell you if you surrender. Uncle Long laughed evilly. Upon hearing this, Uncle Yan's anger immediately burned and he pounced straight at Uncle Long. Uncle Long dodged hurriedly, then he kept shouting, You're too unparticular. How can you fight just like that? Nonsense. This is a competition, you know. Uncle Yan scoffed at Uncle Long's words and became even more ruthless. Uncle Long smiled happily. His efforts were not in vain. The old man was even more serious. Since his opponent was serious, Uncle Long naturally didn't want to lose to him. Then, he immediately began to counterattack fiercely. In an instant, Two wispy figures shuttled back and forth in front of everyone's eyes as fast as lightning. They pounced left and dodged right, dazzling everyone's eyes and making them unable to catch their eyes. Slowly, the two of them reached a stalemate. Uncle Long was eating pills to replenish his divine power as he fought. With the support of these pills, his divine power was basically inexhaustible. Uncle Lien, on the other hand, did not have such a grand plan. Gradually, he began to show signs of defeat. With a leap, the exhausted Uncle Lien jumped out of the battle circle and admitted defeat. Damn it, there was no way they could fight this battle. The other party ate medicinal pills as if they were snacks, but he was embarrassingly short of money. Comparing the two, Uncle Lien felt wronged and wanted to find a hole to hide in. Woo! How could he bully people like this? Compared to the other party, he was like a beggar. 4-0. At this moment, Dongfang Lin deliberately reminded them. Upon hearing this, Uncle Lien's anger instantly rose. Uncle Long smiled faintly and said, "Didn't you want to know where I got these pills? Let me tell you. The pills I just ate were all refined by little Shuai. Really?" When Uncle Lien heard this, he immediately perked up and looked at Len Ruoxue. However, Len Ruoxue ignored him and turned her head to the other side. Seeing this, he was deeply depressed. It seemed that they had offended this little girl quite badly. They didn't even want to look at them. Of course it's true. After Uncle Long finished speaking, he jumped off the ring. Uncle Lien resentfully walked down the stage. Next, a middle-aged man came up from their side. The middle-aged man looked to be in his 40s and was a reverent god-level cultivator. However, he did not observe Len Ruoxue and the others first. Instead, he glanced at Dongfang Lin, who was in charge of judging. The two of them exchanged glances in mid-air before the middle-aged man turned his attention to Len Ruoxue and the others. It went without saying that this middle-aged man was Dongfang Lin's man. At this moment, only An Yu and the demon from Len Ruoxue's side had yet to fight. The demon's target was naturally Dongfang Yu, so it was An Yu who went up this time. Both of them were reverent god-level cultivators, so they immediately attracted everyone's attention as soon as the battle began. The two of them didn't disappoint, and after hundreds of exchanges, An Yu feigned a narrow victory by a single move. Len Ruoxue's team won this round again. Following that, Dongfang Lin announced a temporary ceasefire, and the other 5 matches would continue in the afternoon. After the temporary truce, Len Ruoxue and the rest returned to their own courtyard while Dongfang Yu and the rest gathered in the living room to discuss the morning's competition. Dongfang Yu and the others were rather disappointed with the few matches in the morning, while those who had fought were even more depressed, especially Du Wei and the young man who had been kicked off the ring without even making a move. They were simply too ashamed to show their faces. "Mr. Dongfang Yu, we must win the first 3 games in the afternoon. Only then will we have a chance to win." Yaoji couldn't help reminding him. "I know," Dongfang Yu nodded his head indifferently. He really did not want to say anything that would hurt them. However, he was not optimistic about the competition in the afternoon. Although he was not sure how Len Ruoxue and the others' competition was arranged, their chances of winning were already very slim. After an entire morning of observation, he had a rough understanding of Len Ruoxue and the others' abilities. Hence, he only hoped that they would not lose too badly and did not have any other requests. When he thought of this, he glanced at the calm Dongfang Lin. When he saw Dongfang Lin's calm and composed appearance, he had to admit that he was jealous. How could Lin Fan be so relaxed? In fact, he didn't take this match very seriously. However, if he lost too badly, he would also feel that he would lose face. Although Dongfang Lin knew what Dongfang Yu was thinking, he still intended to stay out of this world and not get involved in their affairs. The short rest time passed quickly. When Len Ruoxue and the rest stepped into the martial arts practice field once again in high spirits, they suddenly realized that there were even more people in the audience than in the morning. Furthermore, as there were no seats, many people had chosen to stand in the aisle and stretch their necks to stare at the seats of both parties. After seeing them enter the stadium, the audience seemed to be even more excited. They were cheering and jumping for joy. There were even a few children who were bold enough to run in front of Leng Ruoxue and the others. They stared at them with their eyes wide open as if they were looking at their idols. Then, they ran away shyly. When Leng Ruoxue and the rest saw this, they could only smile helplessly before taking their own seats. Not long after he sat down, Dong Fangyu and the others also arrived. Leng Ruoxue, who clearly felt an unfriendly gaze, lifted her beautiful eyes and glanced at the other party's seat. Then, she immediately shifted her gaze away. As a result, the gaze that followed her like a shadow was somewhat angry. However, Leng Ruoxue couldn't care less about whether the other party was angry or not. Seeing that the time for the competition was up, she immediately jumped onto the stage. Dong Fangyu and the others frowned when they saw that Leng Ruoxue was going to fight in the first match of the afternoon. Yaoji wanted to rush up immediately, but she was stopped by Dong Fangyu. "Lian Zhe. You go up and fight Leng Ruoxue." Dong Fangyu instructed and shot Yaoji a warning glance. "Yes." When Lian Zhe heard this, he immediately jumped onto the stage like a fish leaping over the dragon gate. Lian Zhe was one of the 4 reverent god-level experts on Dong Fangyu's side. Even though it was unfair to let Lian Zhe fight Leng Ruoxue, they had no choice. They could not lose too badly. After Lian Zhe went up to the ring, he politely bowed to Leng Ruoxue. Then, he said in a gentlemanly manner, "Miss Leng, please make the first move." "If that's the case, then I won't be polite." With that, Leng Ruoxue drew her sword. Immediately after, the crowd saw thousands of fiery red meteor sword rain swarming towards Lian Zhe from all directions. Instantly, everyone's hearts were in their throats. This rain of swords was too terrifying. They were densely packed with burning flames. If they accidentally touched them, they would definitely be injured. Even though they were a distance away from the ring, they could still feel the burning aura of the rain of swords. And Lian Zhe, who was on the ring, felt this burning sensation even more clearly. Lian Zhe wiped the cold sweat from his forehead without batting an eyelid. He was extremely nervous, but he still quickly set up a water curtain in front of himself. He thought that his water curtain could withstand the attack of the sword rain, but he never dreamed that his water curtain would be so vulnerable in the face of the meteor sword rain. The sword rain directly passed through the water curtain and hit his body. Instantly, he felt a burning pain on his body. The pain went deep into his bone marrow and heart-wrenching. It was as if a sea of fire had been ignited inside his body, and the heat from the inside out was about to roast him. It was hot. It was so hot. Lian Zhe couldn't take it anymore and pulled open his clothes. However, this action still couldn't relieve the heat on his body. In an instant, his face had already turned red, and his skin was also shimmering with a faint red. Logically speaking, a reverent god's body was extremely strong. Ordinary flames would not be able to cause any harm to a reverent god-level expert. However, this flame was unbearable, as if he was in a sea of fire. The temperature in his body was rising again and again. Ah! It was so hot. Lian Zhe felt extremely uncomfortable. If there was a 1,000-year-old frozen lake in front of him, he would definitely jump in to lower his temperature. However, this scorching heat was too torturous. Even with his strong willpower, he could not bear it. Chapter 2163, Sneak Attack in the Tournament, 1. Just as Lian Zhe was about to lose control of the heat within his body, Leng Ruoxue's fair wrist flicked again. A stream of water-attributed divine energy was released from her hand. When the water-attributed divine energy came into contact with the air, it immediately turned into tens of thousands of tiny raindrops. It passed through Lian Zhe's water screen and hit his body. Immediately, Lian Zhe felt the heat within his body ease up. That cool and refreshing feeling even made Lian Zhe feel comfortable all over. He was so comfortable that he almost moaned out loud. However, immediately after, the hot flow in his body once again suppressed the cool feeling and took the upper hand. The cool water attribute divine power naturally did not want to be outdone and tried to compete with the fire attribute divine power in Lianzhe's body for the dominant position. Just like that, hot and cold alternated. Lianzhe's face alternated between red and white. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. The two extreme feelings of fighting and pulling each other made him feel so painful that he wanted to find a pillar and kill himself. It was really too uncomfortable. Even though he was a reverent god, he couldn't bear such inhuman torture. After a long time, Lianzhe, who was in unbearable pain, finally admitted defeat. At this moment, Lianzhe was in an exceptionally sorry state. His clothes were drenched in sweat. The way he looked at Leng Ruoxue was as if he was looking at a monster. He was in disbelief. Suddenly, he recalled what Dongfang Lin had told him. The other day, Dongfang Lin had told him that Leng Ruoxue was a demon. Hence, he told them not to underestimate her. Otherwise, they would be the ones who would regret it. At that time, he did not think much of Dongfang Lin's words. However, he believed them now. This little girl was more than a monster. She simply... Lianzhe didn't know how to describe his feelings towards Leng Ruoxue. When they first met, the first impression Leng Ruoxue gave him was that she was very weak. However, he didn't expect that Leng Ruoxue, who originally had a weak appearance, was actually a fierce tiger on the inside. The contrast was too strong. He guessed that there would be many people who would look down on Leng Ruoxue at first sight. However, he reckoned that those people must have met with a tragedy. This battle was a heavy blow to Lianzhe. Although he did not have a strong opinion of Leng Ruoxue like some people did and felt that she was not suitable to lead them, his impression of Leng Ruoxue was not good enough for him to be willing to be used by her. However, after this battle, he felt that he should change his opinion of Leng Ruoxue. In this world, no one was more suitable than this little girl to lead them because this girl was too good at pretending to be a pig to eat tigers. At the thought of this, Lianzhe bowed to Leng Ruoxue very respectfully, then left the arena. However, Leng Ruoxue did not leave. She only saw Leng Ruoxue smiling faintly before saying, "I'll be the next one to fight from our side." "Who's next?" "I'll do it." Yaoji, who couldn't stand it, didn't give the others a chance to speak and just snorted. You've already lost to me, do you want to lose again?" Leng Ruoxue's smile was exceptionally radiant. She was merely stating the truth and had no intention of mocking Yaoji. However, her words were particularly piercing to Yaoji's ears. It felt as if Leng Ruoxue was mocking her. Instantly, anger rushed to the top of her head and she was about to explode. I lost to you last time because I was too careless. I might not lose this time," Yaoji said hatefully. She was quite famous in the divine world, but she lost to a little girl. This fact was really unbearable. "Is that so?" Leng Ruoxue smiled faintly. Then, she turned her beautiful eyes to Dongfang Yu and said, "Your Excellency Dongfang Yu, are you sure you want to send Yaoji?" Dongfang Yu looked at Leng Ruoxue, then at Yaoji. He wanted to refuse, but on second thought, he felt that it would be good to let Yaoji fight. If Leng Ruoxue could defeat her again and again, that woman might be able to settle down. If that was the case, it would be a good thing for all of them. As he thought about this, Dongfang Yu nodded at Leng Ruoxue. Although Yaoji was a little angry at Leng Ruoxue's lack of respect for her, she was relieved to see that Dongfang Yu had agreed. After all, she would still be wary of Dongfang Yu. Then, Yaoji anxiously jumped onto the stage. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes glanced at Yaoji as she chuckled. "Let's start." With that, Leng Ruoxue immediately made her move. Several wind blades flew out from her hand. The wind blades looked simple, but they contained an extremely sharp offensive power. After spinning a few rounds in the air, they carried a vicious aura and charged straight at Yaoji. The wind blades were aggressive and came with a strong pressure. Yaoji was stunned for a moment, but she quickly reacted and immediately released a few wind blades to defend. Logically speaking, if she were to defend herself in such a situation, the best way was to use a curtain wall. However, with Lianzhe's previous experience, she did not dare to use the curtain wall anymore. She was afraid that her curtain wall would not be able to block Lin Ruoxia's wind blades. Moreover, some experts had once said that offense was also the best defense. Hence, it was a good time for her to test it out. The two of them were both using wind blades, so the difference between them was obvious. Lin Ruoxia's wind blades were like a king's, carrying an aura that looked down on the world. However, Yaoji's wind blades were like ants in front of Lin Ruoxia's powerful wind blades. This also made the people present quite puzzled. They were both wind blades, but why did Lin Ruoxia's wind blade look so noble and extraordinary, with a look of disdain, while Yaoji's wind blade was timid and hesitant, like a small figure? The contrast was too strong. For a moment, the crowd didn't know how to evaluate the battle between the two. The scene had never been so quiet before. Seeing this, Uncle Long laughed so hard that his eyes were squinted. He couldn't help but tease the evildoer in a low voice, "This woman really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Isn't she asking for it? She asked for it. I hope Shuai can end the battle quickly." The demon laughed. However, he could tell that Shuai did not intend to end the battle too quickly. On the stage, Lin Ruoxia was just as the evildoer had thought. She was very relaxed and at ease. However, Yaoji could not be like her. When their wind blades met in the air, there were indeed fierce sparks at first, and they were evenly matched. But soon, her wind blades could not hold on, and this fact made her extremely angry. She couldn't understand how Lin Ruoxia's divine power could be so dense. Even the divine skill she released was much more condensed than hers. This fact made her so depressed that she almost vomited blood. However, she wasn't someone who would admit defeat easily. When she saw that her wind blades were no match for Lin Ruoxia, she quickly changed her strategy. Almost all the divine skills that she could use were unleashed at once. Her actions also directly caused her divine power to be consumed at an overly fast rate. However, she wouldn't admit defeat easily. After she ate a few pills to replenish her divine power, she continued to attack. Chapter 2164, Sneak Attack in the Tournament, 2. As for Lin Ruoxia, she only needed a screen to watch as Yaoji continuously released her divine skills. Seeing this, the people present were speechless and didn't know what to say. There were even many people who were thinking that Yaoji had gone crazy. At this rate, even if she ate all the pills that replenished her divine power and used up all her divine power, she would not be able to touch a single hair on Lin Ruoxia's head. What was the point of fighting like this? In an instant, everyone's impression of Yaoji changed drastically. They had thought that she was a smart woman, but now it seemed that she was just so. After all, such an irrational behavior would not achieve anything great. After a long time, Yaoji finally gritted her teeth and admitted defeat. However, Lin Ruoxia could tell from the look of unwillingness on her face that she wasn't completely convinced by her. Nevertheless, Lin Ruoxia didn't mind Yaoji's thoughts. Retracting her curtain wall, Lin Ruoxia turned around and prepared to walk down the stage. Suddenly, she felt a clear chill on her back. Then, she heard someone scream, "Be careful." Lin Ruoxia quickly turned around and saw that Yaoji had appeared behind her without her knowing. She was holding a blade that glinted with a chilling light and was slashing at her. The blade was only a finger's distance away from her, and she could even feel the chill from the blade. At this critical moment, Lin Ruoxia lifted her leg and kicked Yaoji. With a loud bang, Yaoji, who was within reach, was kicked off the stage and fell into the human-shaped pit she had created this morning. The blade in Yaoji's hand was also thrown into the air by the unprepared Yaoji. At this time, the furious evildoer and the others jumped onto the ring and glared at Dongfang Yu and the others with an unfriendly look. The sneak attack left everyone dumbfounded. Dongfang Yu and the others had never expected Yaoji to make such a disgraceful move. Their faces burned as if they were on fire. They wished they could find a hole to hide in. What she had done had really embarrassed them. At that moment, they saw another white light rush towards Yaoji, who had fallen into the human-shaped pit. In an instant, they heard her shriek like a pig being slaughtered. Arg! Help me! Everyone chose to ignore Yaoji's cry for help without exception. However, the corners of their mouths twitched involuntarily. The white light was none other than the exquisite and cute little rabbit. Tsang's 2 front paws were moving up and down, leaving claw marks on Yaoji's face and body. It was so fast that no one could see how it did it. All they could see was a white shadow. Then, they saw Tsang return to Leng Ruoxu's side and lie in her arms, acting cute. After that, the wounded and dying Yaoji climbed out of the pit with great effort. Only then did the crowd see that there was a painting on her face. It was a splash ink landscape painting. It really had mountains, rivers, trees, and flowers. Of course, it was red. After seeing the drawing on her face, everyone was even more curious about what the rabbit had left on her. Yes. They were very curious. However, their curiosity didn't last long. They suddenly caught a glimpse of the knife that Yaoji had thrown in the air falling straight down on her body. Ah! Following that, the crowd heard another shrill scream. They couldn't bear to see Yaoji's miserable state anymore and turned their heads in unison while covering their faces. No one thought of giving Yaoji a healing pill at this time, so she fainted from the pain. Leng Ruoxua glanced at Yaoji, who seemed to have no idea whether she was dead or alive, then turned her beautiful eyes to Dongfang Yu and the others. She said angrily, "Your Excellency Dongfang Yu, Yaoji is your subordinate, right? You must give me an explanation for this." Leng Ruoxua had made such a request because both sides had agreed on an official competition. Such sneak attacks were not allowed. Furthermore, it was after the competition had ended. The nature of such an incident was even worse. Leng Ruoxua didn't want to let go of such a great opportunity either. After all, this opportunity to make Dongfang Yu and the others admit defeat was given to her by Yaoji. If she didn't accept it, wouldn't it be a waste of Yaoji's good intentions? So, from this point of view, she had to thank Yaoji. Dongfang Yu was at a loss for words when he saw Leng Ruoxua's unsightly expression. His eloquence could not compare to Dongfang Lin's to begin with, and with Leng Ruoxua's questioning tone, he was at a complete loss. Therefore, he stammered for a long time and could not say a complete sentence. Dongfang Lin saw that his big brother had been beaten, so he naturally had to help. Then, he smiled as he moved to Leng Ruoxua's side and said in an attempt to please her, "Miss Leng, I'm very sorry for what happened. But don't worry, we'll deal with this matter seriously and won't let you be frightened for nothing." "That's good. I'll be waiting for the results of your investigation." After Leng Ruoxua finished speaking, she gave the evil demon and the rest a look. The few of them then left the arena in tacit understanding, planning to go back. Seeing that they were about to leave, Dongfang Lin quickly called out to them, "Miss Leng, the competition is not over yet. You've already won 7 matches in a row. You only need to win 1 more match and you'll be the winners of this match. So, let's finish the match." Hearing his negotiating tone, Leng Ruoxua replied indifferently, "Do you think we'll still be in the mood to continue with the game after what happened? I'm telling you, I've been frightened and I don't want to compete anymore." With that, Leng Ruoxua and her group left the martial arts practice field without even turning back, leaving behind the audience, Dongfang Yu, and the others who stood awkwardly on the spot. "AI! What the hell is this? Big brother, what do you think we should do?" That girl was angry. "If this matter isn't handled properly, there's a chance that there will be enmity between us." Dongfang Lin asked worriedly. His expression was also unusually serious, but he was not worried at all. "Let's leave the competition like this." Dongfang Yu thought for a moment before he left the martial arts practice field with large strides. Seeing that Dongfang Yu had left, Dongfang Lin naturally had to follow. Seeing that the most important people had left, the others felt that there was no need to stay any longer, so they also left one after another. As for Yaoji, they had all forgotten about her. After Dongfang Lin left the martial arts practice field, he didn't immediately return to his room. Instead, he went to Dongfang Yu's place. After knocking on the door a few times, Dongfang Lin walked straight in. When he saw his big brother sitting on the chair with a long face, he felt a little sympathy in his heart. Big brother. What's the use of being alone like this? The most important thing is to solve the problem. Dongfang Lin reminded. Chapter 2165, Sneak Attack in the Tournament, 3, Of course I know that. However, how should I resolve this matter to satisfy that little girl? Dongfang Yu's head ached. Logically speaking, it was not impossible for them to use this matter to pledge their loyalty to Leng Ruoxue. However, he was afraid that some people would suspect that Leng Ruoxue was taking advantage of their situation. More importantly, he did not think that Leng Ruoxue would be willing to accept their loyalty under such circumstances. After all, that lass was extremely proud to her bones. This will depend on your sincerity. I don't think Leng Ruoxue is an unreasonable person. So, if you want to satisfy her, you must show your sincerity. Otherwise, she won't accept it. Dongfang Lin said with a faint smile. Although he had not spent much time with Leng Ruoxue, he knew that this girl was very opinionated and was not a woman who could be coaxed with just a few words. Hence, if he wanted to seek her forgiveness, he could only show his most sincere sincerity. But what these people lacked the most was sincerity. Who asked them to have their eyes on the top of their heads? Big brother. You can't solve this problem by yourself, so why don't you call everyone here to discuss it? Dongfang Lin suggested. All right. You can send someone to find them. Dongfang Yu agreed after some thought. Yes. Dongfang Lin nodded and made the necessary arrangements. Not long after, Uncle Lien and the others arrived. They also moved to the living room. How's Yaoji? Who are you? Dongfang Yu asked as he swept his gaze across the people present. When the crowd heard this question, they looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know how Yaoji was doing. I don't know. Uncle Lien shook his head and said. Don't tell me you guys didn't care about her and left her on the training field. When Dongfang Lin heard this, he laughed and joked. That woman was really a big problem. However, Yaoji used to be a popular girl in the divinity. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been like a proud peacock who didn't put anyone in her eyes. But how did that woman get to this point? He could not understand. This was probably the so-called courting death. Ah. I think so. Uncle Lien said, a little speechless. At that time, everyone looked down on Yaoji, so who would care about her? Besides, not everyone treated Yaoji like a treasure. Those who fawned over her all day long had abandoned her, so they naturally had no obligation to do so. She deserved it. However, now is not the time to care about her. She caused such a thing, so now we must give Miss Leng an explanation. Perhaps some of you still have a bad impression of Leng Ruoxue and are even unconvinced of her. However, she's still Master Ye's disciple. You can choose not to be loyal to her, but you can't not respect her. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Dongfang Lin's previous gentleness was replaced by a serious expression. Upon hearing this, everyone lowered their heads and fell silent. In fact, although the match had not ended yet, they knew that they had already lost. Even if His Excellency Dongfang Yu had not come out yet, they could not let him fight against 8 of them, could they? They were all powerhouses, so they naturally couldn't do such a shameless thing. After all, this was a competition. Furthermore, Leng Ruoxue still had the powerful Totoro by her side. The fact that the Totoro had yet to fight was a taboo to them. Hence, they accepted this fact very calmly. It was no longer important whether His Excellency Dongfang Yu would fight or not. This match had also caused their sense of superiority to be completely obliterated. In fact, many people had begun to re-evaluate Leng Ruoxue. I'm willing to pledge my loyalty to Leng Ruoxue. Suddenly, Lianjia spoke. Everyone who heard this looked at him in shock. No one had expected that Lianjia would pledge his loyalty to Leng Ruoxue at this moment. However, Lianjia himself did not think that his loyalty to Leng Ruoxue was worth making a fuss over. After all, in this world, the strong were respected. Leng Ruoxue had defeated him, so she naturally would be respected. She defeated me. I'm convinced of her abilities, Lian Zhi said again. Then, he continued to persuade the people present, I know that all of you think that Leng Ruoxue is too young and can't convince the masses. However, you must know that this world is ruled by the strong. Leng Ruoxue can make me, a reverent god, admit defeat with her strength as a divine emperor. Do you still think that she's not worthy of being our master? Leng Ruoxue's potential is incomparably huge. I suggest that you all quickly acknowledge her as your master before she has truly grown up. Otherwise, once she becomes a true expert, I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to recognize her as your master. Zhe, have you really thought it through? Upon hearing this, Uncle Lian asked very cautiously. Yes, ancestor, I advise you to think about it carefully. Leng Ruoxue can definitely lead us to avenge Master Yu, Lian Zhi said. Although he was still young when Master Yu was alive and did not remember many things about Master Yu, he still remembered that Master Yu was a peerless beauty who laughed at the world. In the past, there were countless people who wanted to be loyal to Master Yu. However, there were not many people who could truly stay by his side. Even if Master Yu treated the gods with low strength, he was very kind and friendly. He believed that Master Ye's gentle smile would still leave a deep impression on many people, and he was one of them. Lian Zhi's words really made Uncle Lian think deeply. In reality, before today, he had never thought that Leng Ruoxue would be able to force a reverent god to admit defeat. He was even thinking about his chances of winning if he were to fight Leng Ruoxue. However, he was shocked to find out that he was not confident that he could win against Leng Ruoxue. This was because he was very sure that Leng Ruoxue must have held back at that time. As such, he was even more uncertain about his chances of winning against Leng Ruoxue. Moreover, after listening to Lian Zhi's analysis, he suddenly realized that he seemed to have a different opinion of Leng Ruoxue. He no longer insisted that Leng Ruoxue was not suitable to lead them like before. This fact made him quite shocked and incredulous. Seeing that no one else spoke after Lian Zhi finished, Dongfang Lin could not help but add fuel to the fire. Previously, when Leng Ruoxue saved you, you were not willing to pledge your loyalty to her. Now that you want to pledge your loyalty, I'm afraid she won't accept you so easily, Dongfang Lin said in a light voice. Upon hearing this, the crowd fell even more silent because what Dongfang Lin said was not without reason. Humans were such strange creatures. When they felt that Leng Ruoxue wasn't suitable and didn't want to be loyal to her, they would look down on her in every way possible. But now that they felt that she had great potential and wanted to be loyal to her, based on Leng Ruoxue's personality, it was very likely that she would reject them at the door because they had been chased out by Leng Ruoxue before. Now that they thought about it, their past actions were really wrong. No matter what, Leng Ruoxue was their savior. It was one thing if they didn't repay her kindness, but they even picked on her. If they weren't ingrates, what were they? At this moment, many people looked down on themselves and felt a little guilty towards Leng Ruoxue. Dongfang Lin sat in his chair and observed the crowd's reaction without a sound. Then, he nodded in satisfaction. These people. He just needed to be fixed. To put it bluntly, it was a cheap move. They had been locked up in the fog for so long, and even after being rescued, they still felt that they were still in the era where they could call the wind and summon the rain. In fact, among them, only his big brother and Uncle Lian had decent strength. However, although they seemed to have recovered their strength, in reality, they were still quite a distance away from what they had been in the past. As for the others, Dongfang Lin really didn't know where their sense of superiority came from. Even though most of them were deity emperors, there were many deity emperors in the divine realm and many of them died every day. Therefore, the strength of a deity emperor was not something that could be used against a true expert. Of course, Leng Ruoxue was an exception. After all, Leng Ruoxue was the only deity emperor that could force a hierarch to admit defeat in all these years. There probably wouldn't be another one in the future. Thinking of this, he was even more optimistic about Leng Ruoxue. He also felt that these people's judgment was really not that good. The most hateful thing was that his own big brother actually indulged them so much. Actually, he was clear that the reason why Big Brother would accommodate them so much was because they had gone through thick and thin together. However, he did not agree with Big Brother to indulge them this way. If they had gone through thick and thin together, Leng Ruoxue was their savior. He had never seen anyone treat their benefactor like this. The more he thought about it, the more Dongfang Lin despised these people. I'd advise you not to think about pledging your allegiance for now. First, settle the trouble Yaoji caused. Otherwise, Leng Ruoxue won't be nice to you. Seeing that they didn't respond for a long time, Dongfang Lin continued. Sir Dongfang Lin, do you have any good ideas? Uncle Lien asked timidly. No, I didn't. It's not like you guys didn't see that because of this, that girl is somewhat dissatisfied with me. Dongfang Lin said with a bitter expression. Ai. What should he do then? We don't really understand Leng Ruoxue, so we don't know how to appease her anger. Uncle Lien was very conflicted, but he was even more depressed. Chapter 2166, Assisting in the Investigation, 1, Uncle Lien was also a little regretful. If they had known this would happen, they would have treated Leng Ruoxue better. Now, their relationship, which was already bad, would probably worsen because of Yaoji. Uncle Lien was very worried. However, Dongfang Lin had no intention of giving them any ideas. Instead, he was happy to see them so conflicted and depressed because, in his opinion, these people were asking for it. After beating them up for a few more rounds, Dongfang Lin patted his butt and left as if nothing had happened. For the next few days, Dongfang Yu and the others were surrounded by a gloomy atmosphere. During this period, they had also personally gone to see Leng Ruoxue. However, they were all rejected at the door. The reason Leng Ruoxue gave was that she couldn't afford to see them. This reason also made many people frown even more. They knew that they had really offended Leng Ruoxue this time. Leng Ruoxue's courtyard. At this moment, the few of them were gathered in the garden and chatting leisurely. Dongfang Lin had also come over. However, Leng Ruoxue had only found out today that the originally famous Dongfang Lin was actually so gossipy. He had told them a lot about Yaoji. Of course, it was all about the treatment Yaoji had received these days. Although Yaoji wasn't as hated as a street rat, she was almost there. That day, Yaoji was only carried back to her room after a long time. At that time, she was covered in wounds and a knife was stuck in her leg, almost cutting it off. And because her injuries were too serious, even if she had taken healing medicinal pills, her injuries had not completely recovered. She should have enough time to recuperate. However, before deciding on how to deal with her, Dongfang Lin still upheld the spirit of humanitarianism and kept Yaoji in a room with good food and drink. Unfortunately, this had also caused Yaoji to misunderstand, thinking that she was fine and that they wouldn't mind her actions. Therefore, Yaoji's temper had become very bad during this period of time due to her injuries. He had specially arranged for a few people to serve her, but those people had already run away after being scolded by Yaoji. As he had expected, Yaoji's bad reputation had spread throughout the entire underground castle. Of course, this was not entirely his intention. He had also treated these words as a joke for Leng Ruoxue and the others to hear. Seeing that Leng Ruoxue and the others did not have much of a reaction, he felt a little melancholic. Was what he said not funny? In order to take revenge for this little girl, he had used the overkill move. This was truly killing without spilling blood. However, his reputation was getting worse and worse. However, he didn't expect that after he told Leng Ruoxue and the others about this matter, their reactions would be so calm. This gave him no sense of accomplishment. For a long while, the depressed Dongfang Lin did not speak. Instead, he stared at Leng Ruoxue and the rest with his eyes wide open and a hint of resentment in them. Leng Ruoxue saw this and smiled faintly. Are you done? You must be thirsty. Have some water. After hearing Leng Ruoxue's words, Dongfang Lin picked up his teacup stiffly. Then, He could not help but ask, "Why didn't you guys react? Don't you feel relieved? Can you not be so childish?" What was this? Although that woman is not likable, but after all, she is Master Nenjia's subordinate. So, for the sake of the monk, we can't hit Master Nenjia's subordinate when he is down. Uncle Long said righteously after hearing Dongfang Lin's words. However, he was actually very happy inside. However, he didn't want to show it. Yup. Although Yaoji and I hate each other, she's still inextricably linked to my master. If I were to laugh at her, wouldn't I be questioning my master's judgment of people? Leng Ruoxue replied nonchalantly. As for whether she really thought this way, no one knew. However, when Dongfang Lin heard their words, a trace of disdain welled up in his heart for no reason. These people were really good at pretending. In fact, they couldn't wait for Yaoji to be in trouble. Right. He didn't believe that these people would still be so magnanimous after Yaoji's sneak attack. He wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Little fellow, you've done well. I'll give you credit for this. At this time, Azure said something fair. When Dongfang Lin heard this, he was immediately moved to tears and wanted to prostrate himself in worship. There were still people who understood. Woo! At this moment, Dongfang Lin felt that all his efforts were worth it. After finally getting some comfort from Tsang, Dongfang Lin found Tsang even more pleasing to the eye. At the same time, he became even more interested in this fierce little rabbit and almost became Tsang's #1 fan. However, after Tsang said those words, he closed his eyes leisurely and ignored Dongfang Lin. Dongfang Lin clearly did not mind this. Leng Ruoxue felt helpless when she saw another person being captured by Tsang. She couldn't help but praise Tsang in her heart. Tsang was too charming. Following that, Leng Ruoxue saw Dongfang Lin pestering Tsang tirelessly. In the end, he was so annoyed by Tsang that he buried his head in Leng Ruoxue's arms and ignored Dongfang Lin. Seeing that he was unable to defeat Azure after a long time, Dongfang Lin could only reluctantly take his leave with a hint of depression. Then, he went to find Dongfang Yu and invited him to visit Yaoji together. As soon as they arrived at the door of Yaoji's room, they heard clanking sounds coming from inside. They hurriedly pushed the door open and saw Yaoji holding a beautiful vase in her hand and was about to throw it at the door. The waiter in charge of serving her was hiding under the table, trembling. Upon seeing this, Dongfang Lin immediately shouted, "Yaoji, what are you doing? Stop!" Dongfang Lin was very angry, and the consequences would be very serious. When Yaoji heard this roar, she was dumbfounded for a moment. Holding the vase in her hand, she didn't know whether to put it down or hold it. She was at a loss. At this moment, seeing the Dongfang brothers arrive, the waiter who had been hiding scrambled to their side and hugged their legs. He cried with snot and tears, "Sirs, please don't make me serve her anymore, woo, I'm about to be killed by her." Hearing this, Dongfang Lin's embarrassment turned into anger. "You better get up. A real man shouldn't be like this," Dongfang Lin said, exasperated. However, the waiter only cried and didn't get up. Seeing this, Dongfang Lin couldn't help but frown. He then continued to shout, "Get up, you hear me?" The waiter trembled even more violently after he finished shouting. Dongfang Lin was instantly left helpless. Although he was the one who hinted at some things, did he have to act so realistically? This little waiter looked as if he had been forced into a pitiful state.